I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you personally for all the wonderful messages of support and for your understanding whilst I've been recovering from surgery.
At 2:45 a.m. on this Friday morning, May 29th, 2026, the silent, mist-shrouded corridors of Balmoral Castle became the epicenter of a constitutional earthquake. Breaking reports from the heart of the Scottish Highlands suggest that a document, dormant for nearly 4 years, has been unearthed, shattering the carefully managed peace of the House of Windsor. This is not merely a family matter, it is a moment of administrative warfare. The incident began with the delivery of a single, heavy stock envelope bearing the personal, wax-pressed crest of the late Queen Elizabeth II. It did not arrive via the standard diplomatic bags or the Prime Minister's red boxes. Instead, it was hand-delivered by a restricted circle of royal notaries, men whose families have served the Crown's private estates for generations. By 3:15 a.m., the lights in the King's private study were ablaze, and the atmosphere within the palace was described by insiders as a state of controlled panic. Witnesses within the administrative household claimed the atmosphere turned icy as senior legal advisors were summoned from their beds. One veteran courtier was reportedly overheard whispering to a colleague in the darkened hallway, saying, "We were told all contingencies had been mapped, but this was a shadow protocol no one saw coming." The shock stems from the fact that this document, now being referred to in hushed tones as the Balmoral Covenant, appears to bypass the traditional authority of the reigning monarch. Reports suggest that King Charles III sat in stunned silence for nearly 20 minutes after the seal was broken. A private secretary allegedly described the king's reaction as one of profound realization, as if the late queen was speaking from across the threshold of time to reorder the future of her sanctuary. If the whispers are accurate, this final decree changes everything Princess Catherine thought she knew about her station within the monarchy. It does not touch upon titles or public ceremonies, but rather the sacred geography of the Crown's most private retreat. Before we analyze the deep institutional implications of this shift, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Your engagement allows us to continue tracking these high-level developments within the silent machinery of the throne. By dawn, the situation had escalated from a private shock to an institutional crisis. At 6 a.m., royal security protocols were quietly adjusted. Senior aides were ordered to suspend all non-essential communications regarding the Balmoral estate. The usual channels of information between London and Scotland were severed, replaced by a level of secrecy that even veteran palace staff found deeply unsettling. The documents reportedly grant Princess Catherine unprecedented rights over the Balmoral estate rights that traditionally belong solely to the sovereign. This is a cold, calculated transfer of influence. Reports from the inner circle suggest a senior legal aide remarked during the emergency briefing, "The Queen did not just leave a legacy, she left a fortress, and she has handed the keys to the future Queen, not the present King." This movement of power occurred away from the cameras and the ceremonial visibility of the public eye. Prince William and Princess Catherine were seen arriving at the estate under unusually discreet circumstances, bypassing the standard royal motorcade protocols. There were no smiles, no press releases, only a suffocating silence that has spread through the palace corridors. The emergence of this letter, on this day, May 29th, suggests that the late Queen may have utilized ancient estate structures to ensure her vision for the monarchy outlived her reign. One former royal correspondent described the tension as a clash of two eras, where the late Queen's long-term strategy is now colliding with the immediate reality of King Charles's reign. As the sun rises over the Highlands, the question remains: was this an act of motherly trust, or a final, strategic move to safeguard the crown from an instability she foresaw years ago? Comment below with your thoughts on whether you believe the late Queen intended to create this parallel layer of authority. We are monitoring the legal household's movements every hour. Stay tuned as we peel back the layers of this breaking royal chronicle. To grasp the magnitude of the May 29th revelation, one must look beyond the granite walls of the Scottish Highlands and into the very soul of the British Vale. In the sacred geography of the House of Windsor, Balmoral is not merely a residence, it is a spiritual fortress. For over 170 years, since its purchase by Queen Victoria in 1852, this estate has functioned as the private heartbeat of the monarchy, a sanctuary where the crown sheds its public mask to reveal its true, unyielding face. While Buckingham Palace serves as the administrative engine of the state, Balmoral has always been the residence of the bloodline. It is the place where queens have grieved in absolute silence, where heirs have been forged away from the intrusive glare of the lens, and where the old guard of the institution believes the survival of the dynasty is secured. By quietly empowering Princess Catherine within this specific domain, the late Queen Elizabeth II did not simply grant a property right. She executed a strategic transfer of the monarchy's emotional pivot. In this world of ancient protocols, symbolism is the ultimate currency. To hold authority over Balmoral is to hold the keys to the institution's private history. Reports from within the royal administrative circles suggest that senior courtiers are reeling from the precision of the language used in the recently surfaced covenant. A veteran estate official, speaking under the strictest conditions of anonymity, reportedly described the Queen's intent to a colleague by saying, "The late monarch viewed the Princess of Wales as the only individual capable of maintaining the estate's spiritual isolation. She saw a discipline in Catherine that mirrored her own, a refusal to let the chaos of the modern world breach the Highland perimeter. This alleged decree touches upon residential discretion and ceremonial stewardship, terms that carry immense weight in the hierarchy of the palace. Traditionally, these privileges are governed by the direct discretion of the sovereign. By establishing a parallel layer of authority for Catherine, the Queen has effectively bypassed the standard chain of command. It is a masterclass in legacy protection, ensuring that the sanctuary remains untouched by the shifting tides of palace politics or the personal preferences of future administrations. Insiders suggest that the late Queen spent the final months of 2022 meticulously refining these instructions, relying on confidential advisory mechanisms that predate King Charles's ascension. The timing of this revelation, surfacing amidst the King's ongoing health struggles and the rising prominence of the Prince and Princess of Wales, has turned Balmoral into a constitutional lightning rod. One high-ranking legal custodian was reportedly heard, remarking during an emergency session at the palace, "This is not about a vacation home. This is about the custody of the Queen's memory and the moral authority that comes with it." If Catherine is the guardian of Balmoral, she is the guardian of the Crown's most guarded truths. As the fog rolls across the peaks of Lochnagar on this Friday afternoon, the implications for the House of Windsor are chillingly clear. The King finds himself navigating a reality where his mother's influence remains an active governing force from beyond the grave. The question that now haunts the corridors of power is no longer about the contents of the letter, but about the true extent of the trust placed in a woman who was once an outsider. In the cold calculus of royal survival, Catherine has been elevated to a position that may be impossible to reverse, without fracturing the very foundation of the Vung trio. The silence currently emanating from the Highlands is not one of peace, but of a profound, systemic shift that is only just beginning to be felt. The silence currently permeating the royal administrative corridors is not a sign of peace, but a weapon of war. Within the House of Windsor, the most devastating conflicts do not involve raised voices or public displays of defiance. They are fought through the calculated suspension of information and the cold realignment of institutional loyalty. As of this Friday, May 29th, 2026, a cold civil war has been declared behind the closed doors of the palace, an administrative struggle that threatens to fracture the very foundations of the King's authority. The timeline of this breaking crisis reveals a synchronized sequence of events designed to isolate the shock of the Balmoral Covenant. At 2200 hours on the night of May 28th, the King's senior legal advisers were issued a directive of absolute silence. all non-essential communications regarding estate desan matters were suspended. One high-ranking aide reportedly described the moment as a digital blackout, stating that private internal servers were placed under restricted access to prevent the Queen's final wishes from leaking to the press before the King could formulate a response. By 0600 hours on the morning of May 29th, the movements of the Prince and Princess of Wales signalled a definitive break from protocol. Under the cover of early morning fog, William and Catherine departed London, moving north toward the Scottish Highlands. This was not a ceremonial journey. There was no visibility, no press pack, and an unusually high level of tactical security. Intelligence insiders suggest the couple were operating under a defensive stewardship protocol, a security maneuver rarely used unless a senior member of the royal family is asserting a contested legal right. At 1400 hours today, the conflict reached its institutional peak. A closed-door consultation was convened at Balmoral, pitting the King's private office against a faction now being identified as the Old Guard or the Verbyn Thu Cur. This faction, reportedly led by the formidable Princess Anne, is said to be the primary defender of the late Queen's original intent. During this meeting, the tension was reportedly palpable. A source close to the royal administrative stream recounted a moment of sharp dialogue between a senior secretary and the King's legal counsel. The secretary was heard saying, "This is not about the King's preference. It is about the sovereign's covenant. One does not negotiate with the dead. One honors the precedent they established." This narrative reflects the core of the struggle. A king attempting to maintain absolute control over his reign, while the Old Guard views the late Queen's secret directive as a necessary shield to protect the Vung trio from the King's own perceived vulnerabilities. The battle lines are now drawn with chilling clarity. On one side sits the King's administrative apparatus, focused on the immediate preservation of the monarch's discretion. On the other sits the protectors of the direct bloodline, who believed that Elizabeth II intentionally bypassed her son to ensure that the monarchy's emotional sanctuary remained in the hands of the future Queen. It is a masterclass in institutional tension. There are no shouts, no public ruptures, only the sound of high-level administrative machinery grinding against itself. As the evening shadows lengthen over the Balmoral estate, the palace remains in a state of suspended animation. The King is facing the most significant challenge to his reign, not from an external enemy, but from a masterfully crafted legal instrument signed by his own mother. The question that remains unanswered is whether the King can reverse a shadow protocol that was designed to outlast him, or if the Old Guard has already secured the future of the crown behind his back. To understand how a voice from the past can command the present, one must descend into the unseen institutional architecture of the House of Windsor. The question currently haunting the royal administrative offices on this 29th of May is a profound one. How can a late monarch's directive supersede the authority of a reigning king? The answer lies in what insiders call the authority staircase, a three-tier logic of governance that operates beneath the surface of public ceremony. At the first level of this staircase is the document itself. This is not a simple letter of intent, but what is being described as a special codicil to the sovereign's private will. Under the Sovereign's Private Property Act of 1862, the monarch possesses the unique right to establish independent residential trusts that are shielded from public probate and even the standard scrutiny of the Prime Minister. By utilizing this specific legal conduit, Queen Elizabeth II was able to weave a protective layer around Balmoral that is legally distinct from the King's broader royal prerogative. It is an administrative fortress built to withstand the shifting moods of any future reign. The second level of this mechanism involves the primary enforcer of royal wealth, the Duchy of Lancaster. This ancient estate office, which manages the private assets of the sovereign, operates outside the interference of Parliament or the civil service. According to whispers from the administrative streams, the duchy's legal custodians were issued dormant instructions long before the Queen's passing. These instructions allegedly mandate that certain discretionary authorities over the Balmoral sanctuary be shared with the Princess of Wales. A senior administrative aide was reportedly heard explaining the complexity to a colleague, saying, "The duchy does not answer to the King's desires, it answers to the covenant of the trust. If the late Queen encoded Catherine as a primary steward, that seal is practically unbreakable without a total collapse of the estate's legal framework." At the third and final level is the parallel layer of authority, a mechanism often executed through letters patent or restricted royal instruments. These are the rare tools used to shape succession, titles, and institutional continuity across generations. By allegedly attaching these instruments to Catherine's name, the late Queen created a constitutional shadow. This ensures that in matters concerning the emotional and symbolic heart of the monarchy, Catherine does not act as a mere subordinate to the king, but as a protector of the legacy. This was not an act of betrayal against her son, it was the ultimate fail-safe. Queen Elizabeth II had witnessed 7 decades of institutional volatility, from abdications to internal fractures that threatened to dismantle the crown's dignity. She foresaw a period of immense uncertainty following her departure, particularly as the institution navigated the transition between the reign of Charles and the future era of William and Catherine. By strategically empowering the Princess of Wales, the Queen was ensuring that the emotional spine of the monarchy would remain upright, even if the surrounding structure faced the tremors of illness or succession anxiety. The late Queen viewed Catherine not just as a future consort, but as the Guarantor of Continuity. One legal expert within the palace allegedly remarked during an emergency briefing this morning, "Her Majesty understood that a king may reign, but a system survives." She has placed the system in the hands she trusted most. As the legal household continues its frantic review of these shadow protocols, the realization is settling in. The late Queen has orchestrated her final act of monarchy from beyond the grave. The king is now forced to operate within a landscape where his mother's long-term vision is already being enforced by the very mechanisms he was meant to command. The sheer precision of this shadow governance has left the palace in a state of stunned reflection. The question is no longer whether the king accepts this reality, but how he will govern alongside a princess who now holds a mandate that even a crown cannot easily revoke. In the refined corridors of the House of Windsor, retribution is never a loud affair. It does not manifest in shouting matches or public ultimatums. Instead, it is executed through the technique of administrative isolation, a cold, systematic process of revoking access and tightening the flow of information until the target is rendered powerless. As of the afternoon of May 29, 2026, this silent machinery has been activated to defend the late Queen's final covenant. When news of the Balmoral decree first broke, certain factions within King Charles's private office reportedly attempted to initiate a review of interpretation. These advisors sought to dilute the language of the document, arguing that a princess consort in waiting should not hold such significant discretionary authority over a royal estate. They aimed to categorize the Queen's wishes as merely sentimental rather than legally binding. However, they quickly discovered that they were not merely challenging a piece of paper, but an ironclad alliance that had been forming in the shadows for years. Reports from the administrative heart of the palace suggest that the vanguards of the bloodline led by Princess Anne and Prince Edward have moved with surgical precision to shield Catherine. This alliance, referred to in hushed tones as the Heirs Accord, represents an unspoken doctrine focused on stabilizing the monarchy's future around the direct line of succession. Princess Anne, long regarded as the institution's most disciplined enforcer of protocol, reportedly confronted a senior royal aide who questioned the validity of the decree. Witnesses claim her response was brief and devastating. "The Queen's hand did not shake when she signed this. Neither should yours in executing it." By 1430 today, the Heirs Accord had effectively locked down the Balmoral governance structure. The technical execution was flawless. Access permissions to the estate's private archives were quietly re-evaluated. Suddenly, several of the king's long-trusted personnel found their digital and physical credentials revoked for scheduled security audits. Information approval processes, which previously flowed through the king's central office, have been rerouted to a restricted loop involving only the Prince and Princess of Wales and the Duchy of Lancaster's legal custodians. This is a message sent without words. It is an administrative cordon sanitaire designed to protect the Queen's final vision from internal interference. Within the rigid architecture of royal life, this kind of defensive positioning only occurs when the stakes are existential. The vanguards are not merely protecting Catherine as a family member, they are protecting her as the designated symbolic anchor of the crown's next era. The atmosphere behind the closed doors of the palace is described by one insider as unnervingly still. There are no open confrontations, only the sound of heavy doors closing and the sight of senior aides being excluded from consultations that were previously within their remit. This tactical isolation serves to remind everyone within the firm that the late Queen Elizabeth II had spent 70 years mastering the mechanics of power. She did not leave Catherine vulnerable to the whims of palace politics. She left her embedded within a system of protections that even a reigning king is finding difficult to dismantle. As the late afternoon light hits the grey stone of Balmoral, the reality of the Heirs Accord has sent a tremor through the aristocratic circles of London. Catherine is no longer just a member of the royal family navigating a difficult transition. She is the centre of a strategic fortress. The question that lingers in the minds of those watching this administrative warfare is simple yet chilling. If the system itself has chosen its guardian, what does that mean for the authority of the man currently wearing the crown? The silence of the vanguards suggests that the answer has already been decided. As the shadows of this Friday evening, May 29, 2026, deepen over the granite peaks of the Scottish Highlands, the House of Windsor stands at a definitive crossroads of history. The revelation of the Balmoral Covenant has not merely disrupted palace routine, it has forced the monarchy to confront its own future through the lens of a threefold historical path. Each scenario carries profound implications for the survival of the crown and the legacy of the woman who now finds herself at the centre of a constitutional storm. The first path is one of open institutional conflict. In this scenario, the rift between the administrative office of King Charles and the private household of the Prince of Wales becomes irreparable. A public struggle over the management of the Balmoral estate would signal a collapse of the united front that has defined the monarchy for decades. Legal experts within the palace warn that any attempt to formally challenge the late Queen's decree could trigger a constitutional tremor, exposing the internal mechanics of royal succession to unprecedented scrutiny. One senior courtier was reportedly overheard, saying, "If we break the seal of the Queen's final wish, we risk breaking the trust that holds the entire structure together." The second path is the silent compromise. Here, the extraordinary privileges granted to Princess Catherine would be kept strictly behind closed doors, away from the public eye, and even from certain levels of the palace hierarchy. Catherine would exercise her authority as a shadow guardian of the sanctuary, an uncrowned queen of the monarchy's private soul. While this preserves the appearance of unity, it creates a parallel layer of power that could lead to years of administrative tension. It is a clandestine stewardship, one where the real decisions regarding the Vung Trio's emotional heart are made in the whisper-filled corridors of the Highlands, far from the king's direct oversight. The third path, and perhaps the most likely according to macro-institutional analysis, is one of strategic alignment. In this scenario, King Charles accepts the reality of his mother's decree not as a challenge to his reign, but as an essential component of long-term succession planning. By embracing Catherine as the protector of the Balmoral legacy, the king effectively bridges the gap between his own era and the future reign of William and Catherine. The monarchy, throughout its 1,000-year history, has consistently chosen survival above personal preference. As one high-ranking administrative aide reportedly noted during a confidential briefing, the king understands that his mother was not looking at the next 5 years, but at the next 50. This is about ensuring the fire does not go out when the guard changes. Yet, even as the palace moves toward a calculated resolution, a haunting question lingers over the foggy glens of Balmoral. Is the late Queen's final gesture truly a gift of trust, or is it a golden weight placed upon Catherine's shoulders? The princess now finds herself in an impossible position, caught between the deep reverence she holds for her father-in-law and the sacred duty she owes to the woman who mentored her for a decade. She is no longer just a member of the family. She is the custodian of a legacy that demands the sacrifice of personal comfort for institutional stability. In the cold, intricate maze of the House of Windsor, family affection may occasionally fade, but the demands of the firm are eternal. As the lights of the castle flicker against the darkness of the Scottish night, the truth remains as unyielding as the stone walls themselves. The institution always comes before the individual. The crown may pass from one monarch to the next, but the true protectors of its spirit are often chosen in the shadows of history, long before the world ever learns their names. The covenant is sealed, the lines are drawn, and the future of the monarchy has been decided by a voice that refuses to be silenced by time. 12:01 p.m., March 19, 2026. A digital explosion has just rocked the hills of Montecito and the halls of Buckingham Palace. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have just broken their silence, and they didn't just issue a statement, they declared a total media war. In an official communication that is being described as desperate and hyper-aggressive, the Sussexes have publicly labelled Tom Bower, one of the most feared investigative journalists in the United Kingdom, as, quote, deranged. This is breaking news that is moving faster than the palace can track. We are seeing a high-stakes legal and PR chess match play out in real time. By using such inflammatory language, Harry and Meghan have bypassed the traditional no-comment policy of the royals and gone straight for the jugular. They are calling him a conspiracy theorist and a stalker. But why now? Why this specific man? And why this specific word? Before we dive into the hidden machinery of this statement, do me a quick favor. If you think this PR move by Harry and Meghan is going to backfire, hit that like button right now. And if you want to stay updated on every development of this royal showdown as it happens, make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on. It helps us keep bringing you these deep dive investigations. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look at who Tom Bower actually is. He is not a gossip columnist. He is a former barrister, a high-level trial lawyer who has spent decades building cases, not just writing chapters. He has published over 25 books on the world's most powerful people, from media moguls to billionaires. And here is the statistic that is terrifying the Sussexes. Not one person has ever successfully sued him. The statement from the Duke and Duchess claims that Bower's commentary has, quote, long crossed the line from criticism into fixation. They are accusing him of constructing ever more elaborate theories about people he has never met. In a particularly biting section of their message, they tell the public that those seeking, quote, deranged conspiracy and melodrama know exactly where to find him. But here is the Streisand effect in full swing. By attacking the book, titled Betrayal, before it even hits the shelves on March 26th, they have done exactly what their PR team should have feared most. They have validated him. Within 48 hours of these excerpts appearing in the Times of London, and immediately following this aggressive clapback, Betrayal shot straight to the #1 spot on Amazon. They didn't bury the book, they launched it into the stratosphere. There is a specific mechanism at play here that we need to decode. Critics and royal insiders are pointing to the word deranged as a deliberate signal. In the world of the Sussex Squad, their most dedicated online fanbase critics are often labelled as derangers. By using this specific word in an official capacity, Meghan isn't just defending herself, she is effectively putting up what some analysts call a bat signal. It is a call to arms for her followers to target a 79-year-old journalist with everything they have. The timing is not accidental. We are less than 1 month away from their scheduled return to Australia in mid-April 2026. This is their first trip back in 7 years, and they are returning not as working royals, but as private citizens selling high-priced luxury retreats and keynote speeches. The ghost of Tom Bower's reporting is haunting this upcoming tour. If these allegations in betrayal were simply the ramblings of a deranged man, the standard protocol for high-profile figures is silence. You ignore the noise so it doesn't gain traction, but Harry and Meghan did the opposite. They reacted with such intensity that it suggests they are terrified of what is documented in those pages. Remember, Harry loves to sue. He has taken on the British tabloids, stood in courtrooms, and fought for years over press intrusion. So the big question everyone is asking today is this. If Tom Bower is lying, why is there no lawsuit? Why a press statement instead of a legal summons? In the world of investigative journalism, you sue when something is false. You issue an angry press release when something is true, and you have no other way to stop it. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think calling a veteran journalist deranged is a smart move? Or have they just confirmed that everything in this book is true? Type Team Truth or Team Sussex below. We are reading every single one of your responses. Stay tuned, because the timeline of this betrayal is just beginning to unfold. To understand why this deranged label is being thrown around today, we have to look back at the cold, hard trail of debris left in their wake over the last 15 years. Tom Bower isn't just looking at the present, he is connecting the dots of a pattern that began long before Meghan Markle ever stepped foot on British soil. This isn't just a story about a royal fallout, it is a clinical study of a strategic trajectory that is now hitting a massive wall of reality. The pattern crystallized in 2011 on the beaches of Jamaica. Meghan married Trevor Engelson in what friends described as a genuine love story. But the timeline tells a different tale. As soon as the television show Suits launched and she moved to Toronto, that chapter was closed with surgical precision. Engelson was reportedly blindsided, receiving his rings back in the mail. This was the first documented instance of what investigators call the ladder pattern, using a connection to reach a new height, then discarding it the moment it becomes redundant. By June 2018, that same energy collided with 1,000 years of tradition inside the walls of Kensington Palace. According to the documents compiled by Bower, a reconciliation tea was held between Harry, Meghan, William, and Catherine. The brothers were trying to fix the unfixable. The tension escalated until the future King of England, Prince William, pointed a finger during the discussion. Meghan's response was a moment that froze the room. She looked directly at William and said, "If you don't mind, get your finger out of my face." This wasn't just a disagreement, it was the exact second the royal alliance fractured beyond repair. For the palace staff and the family members present, the mask had slipped. They realized they weren't dealing with a new family member, but a professional disruptor who did not recognize the hierarchy of the crown. Then came May 6, 2019. The birth of Archie should have been a moment of global celebration, but instead, it became a masterclass in metadata discrepancies. While the world was told the child was born that morning, digital forensic analysts began questioning the official photos. The metadata on the first public images suggested they were taken on May 8th, despite the claim of a May 6th birth. This was the moment the secrecy machine went into overdrive. Why the 2-day gap? Why the refusal of a hospital's steps photo? This was the spark that ignited years of speculation regarding surrogacy, a question that has never been directly answered, only met with more aggressive PR statements. Fast forward to August 2023, and the desperation becomes financial. Prince Harry was forced to fly to Tokyo, not for a state visit, but to personally court a Japanese billionaire to keep his charity, Centerbail, from collapsing. The royal aura was fading, replaced by the reality of a man who needed massive infusions of cash to maintain his lifestyle. By June 2025, the defensive maneuvers shifted to social media. A video appeared on Instagram showing Meghan dancing with Harry, clearly displaying a baby bump. To the casual observer, it was a sweet moment. To the analytical eye, it was a high-production response to the persistent questions about her pregnancies. Critics immediately began analysing the movement of the prosthetic, but the Sussexes remained silent on the specifics, choosing instead to let the Sussex squad do the talking. Now, we are back at March 19, 2026. The deranged statement is the final, frantic attempt to stop the clock. But the clock is ticking toward a massive deadline. April 2026, Sydney, Australia. 7 years ago, they were the stars of the Southern Hemisphere. In a few weeks, they return as private citizens, charging $3,000 for a photo. Every journalist waiting for them at the airport will have a copy of Betrayal in their hands. The timeline is closing in, and the questions are no longer just whispers. They are becoming an international roar. What happens when the person who spent years burying the past finally runs out of places to hide? This isn't just a battle of words, it is a battle of legitimacy. To understand why the Sussexes are lashing out so violently against Tom Bower today, we have to look at the two most explosive dossiers contained within the pages of Betrayal. These aren't just character attacks, they are documented challenges to Prince Harry's psychological autonomy and the very legal standing of his children in the British line of succession. The first file in this authority staircase involves a diagnosis from the very top of the royal hierarchy. It has been reported that Queen Camilla, a woman who spent decades navigating the inner sanctum of the monarchy, privately told a close confidant 3 devastating words. Meghan brainwashed Harry. This isn't just a stepmother's opinion. It is supported by a documented pattern that palace insiders call the Friends Cleansing. Internal records from 2018 and 2019 reveal a systematic isolation of the prince. Harry didn't just drift away from his social circle, he underwent a total communication blackout. He changed his personal phone number without informing his oldest friends, men he had known since Eton and his days in the military. Some were even excluded from the evening wedding reception after years of loyalty. The psychological mechanism here is clinical. By cutting off a target's historical support network, you create a vacuum that can only be filled by one person's narrative. This is the hostage situation that critics have whispered about for years, now laid bare with specific dates and names in Bower's investigation. But, as damaging as the brainwashing allegation is, the second file is the one that could truly dismantle the Sussex legacy. It concerns the births of Archie and Lilibet, and it is a topic that has moved from the corners of the internet into the realm of serious legal inquiry. High-ranking aristocratic figures, including Lady Colin Campbell and even Meghan's own family members like Samantha Markle, have publicly demanded absolute medical proof of these births. This is not about being intrusive, it is about a mandatory legal requirement known as the British Royal Succession Law. Under this centuries-old legal framework, to be included in the line of succession, a child must be born of the body of the mother. Currently, Archie and Lilibet sit at 6th and 7th in line to the throne of the United Kingdom. If a surrogate was used, a question that has been fueled by the strange secrecy surrounding the hospital stay and the metadata discrepancies in the birth announcements, the legal implications are seismic. According to the mechanics of the British Constitution, a child born via surrogacy, regardless of biological parentage, is not eligible to hold a title or a place in the line of succession. The silence from Montecito on this specific issue has been deafening. They have had years to provide a simple medical confirmation, yet they chose the path of cloak and dagger secrecy. The betrayal dossier suggests that Prince William and the King are fully aware of these discrepancies and that a legal deadline is approaching. If these questions are ever formally contested in a court of law, the result wouldn't just be a scandal, it would be a total erasure of the Sussexes' royal standing. This is why the word deranged was fired off today like a flare in the dark. It is a desperate attempt to discredit the man who has spent the last 3 years gathering the receipts. But as the clock ticks toward their arrival in Australia, the world is beginning to wonder. If there is nothing to hide, why is the reaction so terrified? The walls of the Montecito bubble are thinning, and the legal reality of the British Crown is finally catching up. What happens when the public demands to see the evidence that the Sussexes have spent millions trying to bury? Behind the angry press releases and the accusations of madness lies a much colder, more calculated reality that Harry and Meghan are desperate to hide: the total financial and reputational decapitation of their global brand. While the public sees the deranged statement as a defense of their character, Tom Bower's investigation reveals it is actually a frantic attempt to mask a catastrophic internal audit that took place behind closed doors. To understand why the Sussexes are panicking, we have to look at what experts call the collapse of the halo effect. For years, Harry relied on the prestige of the British monarchy to shield his personal flaws. But once that shield was removed, the data began to tell a very different story. The first step in this collapse began with a comprehensive brand audit. Dr. Sophie Chanduka, a highly respected figure in the corporate and charitable world, was commissioned to survey 50 major global organizations and potential donors. These weren't just random charities, these were the titans of industry. The people Harry needed to fund his post-royal life and his primary charity, Centre Bail. The trigger for the current crisis was the result of that survey. The feedback from these 50 massive corporations was unanimous and devastating. The report concluded that Prince Harry was no longer a global asset. In the eyes of the world's biggest donors, he had become a reputational liability. His value had not just plateaued, it had completely collapsed. The halo was gone, replaced by a toxic association that major brands were no longer willing to touch. But it was Harry's reaction to this hard evidence that truly signaled the end of his credibility. Instead of taking the audit as a wake-up call to pivot his strategy, Harry reportedly retreated into what insiders call his La La Land bubble. When presented with the proof that his brand was worthless, he didn't offer a plan for reform. Instead, he made a comparison that left the room stunned. He allegedly compared his situation to that of Johnny Depp, a man who faced a massive public trial and cultural cancellation before eventually attempting a comeback. This comparison was more than just arrogant, it was a symptom of a total detachment from reality. While Depp fought a legal battle over his personal life, Harry was being told that his professional brand, his very reason for being a public figure, was failing because he had nothing to offer but grievances. The final step in this mechanism was the inevitable consequence of that arrogance. Following the audit and the subsequent fallout, Dr. Sophie Chanduka did not just leave the organization. She departed after publicly accusing Harry of harassment. The woman who tried to save his charity by showing him the truth was allegedly met with the same hostility we saw in the deranged statement. The result? Centre Bail, the charity Harry founded to honour his mother's legacy, fell into a state of total financial paralysis. The donors fled, the brand was on the nose, and the person who delivered the truth was silenced or pushed out. This is the betrayal that Tom Bower is documenting, not just a betrayal of the royal family, but a betrayal of the very people who tried to help Harry survive in the real world. Every time Harry and Meghan fire off an angry statement, they are trying to drown out the sound of their collapsing bank accounts and the silence of the corporations that used to call them. The question that remains is, how much longer can they maintain the illusion of power when the data shows they are operating in a vacuum? As the April deadline in Australia approaches, the world is about to see exactly what happens when a brand that has lost its value tries to sell itself one last time. Does the public still buy the Depp-style comeback, or is the liability label now permanent? The most chilling aspect of the betrayal dossier isn't a secret conversation or a palace rumour, it is a price tag. To understand the true depth of the crisis facing Harry and Meghan, we have to look at the cold, hard numbers of their upcoming return to Australia in April 2026. This isn't a homecoming, it is a monetization event that has set a trap for their remaining credibility. In October 2018, the world watched in awe as tens of thousands of Australians packed the streets of Sydney. They stood for hours under a blistering sun just to catch a 5-second glimpse of the newlyweds. It was a moment of pure organic royal fever. It was free, it was massive, and it was the absolute peak of their global power. Fast forward to today, the reality of 2026 is far more transactional. For the Sydney luxury retreat headlined by Meghan, the gates are no longer open to the public. They are open to those with a credit card. Entry starts at $2,699, but the true reveal of their current status is the VIP package. $3,199 for a group photo with the Duchess. When a global icon begins charging for a handshake, they have entered what royal historians call the Fergie-ization phase. This is a direct reference to Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, who famously spent years trading her royal proximity for commercial survival after being frozen out of the palace's financial inner circle. With the massive $100 million Netflix and Spotify deals reportedly drying up or failing to renew, the Sussexes are following the Sarah Ferguson blueprint, selling access because the brand no longer generates its own gravity. This transition from royal figure to commercial product has triggered a massive legal and public backlash in Australia. A viral petition on change.org has already gathered significant momentum, and its message is a direct hit to the Sussexes' ego. The petition demands that the Australian government refuse to spend a single dollar of taxpayer money on their security or logistics. Why? Because the public has officially reclassified them. They are no longer representatives of the Crown. They are being labelled as citizens for hire. The legal mechanism of this protest is fascinating. By operating as private entities charging thousands of dollars for attendance, Harry and Meghan have stripped themselves of the internationally protected person status that usually grants royals taxpayer-funded protection. The Australian public is effectively saying, if you are here to run a business, pay your own bills. This creates what analysts are calling the Australia mousetrap. In 2018, the crowds were so large that the police struggled to contain the excitement. In 2026, the crowd is capped at a maximum of 300 women who can afford the $3,000 fee. The optics of this contrast are devastating, but the real danger isn't just the empty streets, it is the journalists who will be lining them. Every reporter, every camera crew, and every talk show host waiting for Harry and Meghan in Sydney will have just finished reading Tom Bower's Betrayal. The book drops on March 26th, giving the media exactly 3 weeks to digest every allegation of brainwashing, every metadata discrepancy, and every corporate audit failure before the Sussexes land. There is nowhere to hide in a country that once loved you for free, but is now being asked to pay for your presence. As they prepare to step off that plane in April, the Sussexes aren't just facing a skeptical public, they are walking directly into a trap set by their own financial desperation. What happens when the world's most famous citizens for hire realize that the public has stopped buying what they are selling? As the clock ticks toward the March 26th release of Betrayal, the world is watching a high-stakes survival game. Harry and Meghan are no longer just fighting for their brand, they are fighting for their future. Based on the patterns documented by Tom Bower and the current legal climate in both London and Montecito, we can now map out the 3 most likely scenarios for what happens next. The first scenario, the most aggressive one, is for Harry and Meghan to actually follow through and sue Tom Bower for libel. We estimate the probability of this at a mere 5%. Why so low? Because of a legal mechanism known as discovery. If the Sussexes take Bower to court, his legal team would have the right to demand access to everything they have spent years hiding. We are talking about internal medical records regarding the births of their children, private financial ledgers, and every NDA signed by their staff. For Harry and Meghan, a lawsuit would be a form of legal suicide. Tom Bower is a former barrister. He isn't just waiting for a fight, he is baiting them into one so he can get those records under oath. The second scenario is the silent hope strategy, with a probability of 25%. This would involve the Sussexes ignoring the book entirely and hoping that the luxury retreat in Australia can reset their image. But there is a massive tactical flaw in this plan. The book Betrayal lands on March 26th. They arrive in Sydney in mid-April. That gives every reporter in Australia exactly 3 weeks to memorize every devastating allegation. The book will act as a permanent ultimatum on the desk of every interviewer they encounter. Silence in the face of such specific documentation often looks like a confession. This brings us to the third and most realistic scenario. Meghan will likely continue to leverage the Sussex Squad, her highly aggressive online fan base, to wage a proxy war against Tom Bower's character. While her followers attack him as deranged or a stalker, Harry will likely continue to sink deeper into small-scale, commercial projects to maintain their cash flow. They have burned so many bridges with the global elite and the royal family that they are now trapped in the attention economy. They have no choice but to keep the controversy alive, because the moment the world stops talking about them, the money stops flowing. They are trading their long-term dignity for short-term survival. But there is one detail that suggests they have already lost this round. Before we reveal the final, most terrifying chapter that has the Sussexes panicking, I want to hear your prediction. Which scenario do you think will play out in Sydney? Will they stay silent? Or will the pressure finally cause a total public meltdown? Let us know in the comments below. We are monitoring the debate in real time. And if you found this investigation valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep digging where others are afraid to look. Because here is the open loop that Meghan Markle never saw coming. Within the pages of Betrayal, there is a chapter about the events that took place in Vancouver during the Invictus Games. The Sussex Squad actually filmed Tom Bower there, thinking they were humiliating a 79-year-old man. What they actually did was provide visual proof that he was a primary eyewitness to their behavior. There is something documented in that Vancouver chapter, something so explosive that the Sussexes fired off the deranged statement before they even read the full book. They are trying to discredit the witness before he can take the stand. What did Tom Bower see through that camera lens in Canada? The answer arrives on March 26, and it might just be the final nail in the coffin of the Sussex dream. Thank you for watching this breaking investigation. We will be here with the full breakdown the moment Betrayal hits the shelves. Don't go anywhere. March 29th, 2026, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Breaking news is flooding the wires as a legal firestorm erupts in Montecito. The wall of silence that has protected the Duchess of Sussex for nearly a decade has just been breached. We are looking at a three-pronged legal assault that her team cannot simply silence with a press release. 3 explosive books, 3 different angles, and 1 shared target. This morning, the clock has officially run out. For years, the public was sold a very specific narrative. The story of a struggling actress, a self-made humanitarian who rose from the set of a cable drama to the heights of Windsor. But behind the scenes, a different dossier was being compiled. Between the years of 2004 and 2011, there is a gap in the official biography, a period Meghan Markle has spent millions trying to scrub from the digital record. According to sources within the legal team of Thomas Markle Jr., the era of the struggling actress was actually something far more calculated. While the official story tells us of a woman driving a car with broken doors to auditions, the flight manifests and hotel registries tell a different tale. We are talking about private invitations to Port Hercules in Monaco, exclusive gatherings on multi-million-dollar yachts in the Mediterranean. This isn't just gossip. This is about the foundation of a global brand built on a curated past. If you find this investigation vital, hit the like button right now and subscribe to join our deep dive community. It's the fastest way to stay updated on this developing story. The investigation has traced a specific paper trail leading directly to the VIP suites of Soho House at 76 Dean Street, London. This is where the narrative shifts from Hollywood to the global elite. Marcus Anderson, the global membership director of Soho House, is the man who reportedly held the keys. His guest lists from 2005 and 2006 are now the subject of intense legal scrutiny. Thomas Jr. has been vocal about this transformation. In a recently recorded interview that has sent shockwaves through the Sussex camp, he didn't hold back. He stared directly into the camera and said, and I quote, "I hope you are watching, Meghan, because you are the stain of humanity. You brushed the entire family under the carpet like we don't exist, and then you lied about having a family you always wanted. We have always been here." The motivation for this PR scrub is clear. To fit the mold of a royal humanitarian, the yacht girl rumours and the elite networking circles of Monaco had to disappear. But here is the mechanism of how this past erasure works. First, you hire a high-end digital reputation management firm. Second, you trigger right-to-be-forgotten requests in multiple jurisdictions. Third, you replace the vacuum with a new, wholesome origin story. However, that mechanism fails when a civil subpoena enters the room. The legal team, representing the victims in the Jeffrey Epstein case, is reportedly looking for specific testimonies. They are focused on a very particular question. Did Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew know each other long before she ever met Harry? This is the authority ladder that is terrifying the Sussexes. First, we have the records, the guest lists and membership logs from Soho House and elite yacht clubs. Second, we have the agency, the legal teams in New York and London, who are now looking for a tit-for-tat moment. If Andrew was protected, why was he protected? Investigative journalist Tom Bower has been digging into this for years. He claims he has the documents that Meghan cannot dispute. Bower famously stated that he chooses people who want to hide their secrets because he loves digging away to find what they don't want us to know. His latest dossier is focused on the financial links between the Soho House network and Meghan's early travel expenses. If these travels were not self-funded, then who was paying the bill? The implications are massive. If it is proven that Meghan Markle had a pre-existing relationship with members of the inner royal circle or their controversial associates, the entire foundation of the Sussex romance collapses. It changes the story from a chance meeting to a calculated entry. The deadline for the first set of these disclosures is approaching. By late April 2026, the first page of these books will go public. Meghan's legal team is currently working 48-hour shifts to file cease and desist letters, but as we've seen with Tom Bower in the past, he does not publish what he cannot prove in a court of law. This brings us to a critical crossroads. Will the Duchess successfully block the release of these 3 books, or is the truth about 2004 to 2011 about to become the biggest royal scandal of the decade? Drop a comment below with the word truth if you think the public has a right to know the full story. The most realistic scenario? A total brand collapse as the financial records from Archewell merge with the personal revelations from her own family. This is no longer just a family feud, it is a battle for the history books. Stay tuned as we move into the second part of this dossier, the Archewell tax mystery. The numbers don't lie, and the IRS is now asking questions that no PR team can answer. The architecture of a global legend is being dismantled, stone by stone, through a chronological trail of evidence that spans over 2 decades. This is the roadmap of a collapse, a timeline of events that Meghan Markle's PR machine has fought desperately to suppress. But as of late March 2026, the floodgates have officially opened. The origin of this dossier traces back to the Mediterranean sun between 2004 and 2011. While the world was told she was a struggling actress in Los Angeles, flight manifests and social registries place her at elite yachting events in Monaco and the French Riviera. This was the networking phase. It wasn't about auditions, it was about establishing a high-stakes network with the global ultra-wealthy. The immediate consequence of these years was the creation of a contact list that would eventually bypass traditional Hollywood gatekeepers, leading her directly into the inner sanctum of the global elite. Fast forward to May 2018. Windsor. Weeks before the royal wedding, Thomas Markle Jr. took a massive personal risk by writing an open letter to Prince Harry. He warned that this marriage would leave destruction in its wake and that Meghan would eventually isolate Harry from his own bloodline. The immediate consequence? The global media, coached by high-end PR firms, branded Thomas Jr. as unstable and bitter. His warnings were buried under the weight of a royal fairy tale. But today, looking back from 2026, every single prediction in that letter has manifested with surgical precision. By July 2022, the battle shifted from family letters to hard-hitting journalism in London. Tom Bower, the biographer often called the Witchfinder General, published Revenge. This was a turning point because Bower didn't rely on anonymous whispers. He had 80 on-the-record sources. The consequence was a legal stalemate. Despite Meghan's aggressive legal posturing, no lawsuit was ever successfully filed against Bower. Why? Because you cannot sue the truth when it is backed by 80 signed testimonies. This proved that the Duchess was not untouchable. The moral breaking point occurred in December 2025 at a hospital in Mexico. Thomas Markle Sr., aged 81, underwent a grueling 3-hour emergency surgery. Surgeons were forced to amputate his foot and lower leg to save his life from sepsis. While Thomas Jr. sat by his father's bed managing the terror of the aftermath, Meghan remained in Montecito, reportedly filming content for her lifestyle brand. The immediate consequence was a total fracture of her humanitarian image. Sources say this was the moment Thomas Jr. decided to stop being vague and start being specific. On January 1, 2026, the commercial facade cracked. The launch of American Riviera Orchard was supposed to be a triumph. Instead, a catastrophic system glitch revealed the internal dashboard of the business. The data was chilling. 137,000 unsold jam jars and $23 million in stagnant inventory. The sold-out narrative was exposed as a manufactured PR illusion. The consequence was a loss of investor confidence that has left the brand in a state of financial paralysis. Now, we reach today, March 20th, 2026. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, has reportedly entered final negotiations for a $20 million book deal. This is the nuclear option. Unlike the others, Fergie was inside the rooms where the masks came off. She was the one who mentored Meghan on the unwritten rules of the monarchy. The consequence of this deal is an immediate legal ultimatum from Montecito. But as the legal teams scramble, a deeper question emerges. If these 3 books, the family history, the financial records, and the palace secrets, all hit the shelves at the same time, what is left of the Sussex legend? We are watching a masterclass in how a carefully constructed image dissolves when it is hit by the 3 things it fears most: a brother who remembers, a journalist who has the receipts, and a royal who no longer has a reason to stay silent. The clock isn't just ticking, it's striking midnight. The glossy exterior of the Sussex lifestyle brand has always been its greatest asset, but beneath the curated aesthetic lies a sophisticated psychological trap designed to manipulate market perception. To understand why the American Riviera Orchard empire is currently facing a catastrophic financial freeze, we have to look at the smoke and mirrors mechanism. A 3-step strategy of artificial scarcity that has spectacularly backfired. This isn't just about jam, it's about a fundamental failure in how a global icon tried to weaponize hype against reality. The first phase of this mechanism is the celebrity anchor. This is where the illusion of success is meticulously constructed. Instead of a traditional retail launch, the brand released a microscopically small batch, exactly 50 jars of strawberry jam, to a carefully selected list of high-profile influencers. The goal wasn't sales, it was the headline. When 50 influencers post about a product that the public cannot buy, it triggers an immediate media firestorm. Within hours, Harper's Bazaar and other major outlets were reporting that the brand was sold out. This was the trigger for step 1, creating the psychological sensation of a runaway success before a single dollar of public revenue had been generated. But here is where the mechanism becomes dangerous. Step 2 involves leveraging the illusion. Based on the manufactured sold-out narrative, the brand's management used that media hype to justify a massive capital injection into mass production. Reports suggest that based on the 50-jar hype, an order for 150,000 units was placed. This required millions of dollars in upfront investment for ingredients, glass, labeling, and, most importantly, climate-controlled warehousing. The strategy was to pivot from exclusive luxury to mass-market dominance, banking on the idea that the public's hunger for a piece of the Montecito dream would be insatiable. However, step 3 is where the smoke and mirrors met the digital truth. The market reality simply did not align with the PR headlines. While the media was told the brand was a sensation, a devastating system glitch on the brand's website recently revealed the back-end inventory numbers data that was never intended for public eyes. The figures were a death knell for the project's credibility. Of the 150,000 units produced, 137,000 jars are reportedly sitting unsold in a warehouse. The financial fallout is staggering. We are looking at $23 million in total unsold inventory stock that is currently losing value every single day. For a lifestyle brand, inventory is a ticking time bomb. Perishable goods have expiry dates, and warehousing costs are a constant drain on resources. At the current documented rate of sales, reportedly a microscopic fraction of a percentage of stock per day, it would take nearly a decade to clear the current inventory. By that time, the product would be literal waste. This is why industry analysts have shifted their valuation of the brand from global icon to distressed asset. When a brand is built on the premise of being sold out, but is actually sitting on $23 million of dead stock, the brand equity evaporates. The smoke has cleared, and the mirrors have shattered, leaving behind a paper trail of debt and unsold jars. As the legal pressure from Thomas Jr., Tom Bauer, and Sarah Ferguson mounts, the question isn't just about what they will say, it's about how much longer the Sussexes can afford to keep the lights on in a warehouse full of products that nobody is buying. The mystery of who is actually funding this $23 million deficit is the next thread in a tapestry that is rapidly unraveling. While personal memoirs and family feuds grab the headlines, the most dangerous threat to the Sussex Empire isn't found in a library, it's found in the archives of the Internal Revenue Service. As of late March 2026, the narrative of Archerwell as a global philanthropic powerhouse is being dismantled by a single document, the IRS Form 990 for the fiscal year 2024. This is where the authority ladder comes into play, moving beyond tabloid speculation and into the cold, hard reality of federal and state investigations. The first rung of this ladder is the document itself. In the United States, tax-exempt organizations are required to file a Form 990, a public record that discloses exactly how much money a charity brings in and, more importantly, exactly where that money goes. According to the latest filings obtained from the California Registry of Charities and Fundraisers, Archwell's financial health has reached a critical breaking point. The data is indisputable. Total operating expenses for the year reached $5.1 million, while total donations and grants received plummeted to just $2.1 million. This leaves a staggering $3 million net loss for a single calendar year. For any traditional charity, a deficit of this magnitude would trigger an immediate internal audit. But for the Sussexes, the consequences have already escalated to the second rung of the ladder: state intervention. The California Attorney General's office has reportedly moved the Archewell Foundation into a delinquent status. This is not a mere clerical error. It is a legal designation that prevents an organization from soliciting or spending charitable funds. In the world of non-profits, a delinquency notice is a scarlet letter. It signals to every major donor that the organization is no longer in good standing with the law. The break point of this investigation, however, lies in the line items for personnel. The Form 990 reveals that while the foundation's charitable output has dwindled, its internal costs have remained astronomical. Salaries for the year were listed at $913,000. On the surface, this might seem standard for a major non-profit, but investigative scrutiny has revealed a disturbing detail. Archewell has reportedly downsized its staff by 60%, leaving only 2 primary employees on the payroll. This creates a mathematical anomaly that the IRS is now reportedly examining. How does a foundation justify nearly $1 million in salary and compensation for just 2 individuals while recording a $3 million loss? To seasoned financial investigators, this is a classic red flag. It suggests that the charity is not functioning as a vehicle for global change, but rather as a private ledger to fund a high burn rate lifestyle. When you factor in the additional other expenses category, which reached $2.9 million, the question of where the money is actually going becomes impossible to ignore. This is the mechanism of a financial collapse. Step 1. Public donations dry up as the brand loses its shine. Step 2. Operating costs, including private security and travel, continue to soar. Step 3. The charity's reserves are depleted to cover the gap. The result is a delinquent status that freezes the organization's ability to recover. As the IRS and the California Department of Justice look closer at the paper trail, the Sussexes are facing a reality that no PR team can spin. You can stop a book with a lawsuit, and you can ignore a brother's interview, but you cannot cease and desist a federal tax audit. The numbers on the 990 form are filed under penalty of perjury. As the investigation deepens, the world is left wondering, if Archewell is no longer a functioning charity, then what, exactly, has it become? The answer may lie in the third and final dossier, the one currently being prepared by an insider who was there when the first dollar was spent. The Montecito legal team is currently facing a strategic nightmare, the scenario tree. In the world of high-stakes crisis management, you don't just look at the problem, you map out every possible exit. But as of late March 2026, the exit ramps for the Duchess of Sussex are rapidly narrowing. There are 3 primary paths this triple front siege could take, and only one of them is grounded in the hard reality of the documents we have seen. The first path is the legal injunction, often referred to in PR circles as the pink scenario. In this version of events, Meghan's attorneys successfully secure a global gag order, arguing that the books contain stolen private data or defamatory fabrications. The goal? A total retraction before a single page is printed. However, investigative analysts place the probability of this at a microscopic 2%. Why? Because of the Tom Bower precedent. Bower, known in London as the Witchfinder General of biographers, has never lost a libel case of this magnitude. He does not publish on a whim, he publishes on a foundation of 80 on-the-record sources and verified financial records. To stop him, Meghan would have to prove that IRS tax filings and signed testimonies are false, a move that would open her up to discovery, a legal process that could force her to reveal even more than the books themselves. The second path is the financial settlement, or the compromise scenario. This involves a quiet, high-value payout to buy the silence of Sarah Ferguson and Thomas Jr. Rumors from within the publishing world suggest that Sarah Ferguson's silence carries a price tag of $20 million, matching the advance Prince Harry received for his own memoir. This scenario has a slightly higher probability of 15%, but it faces a massive liquidity wall, as we've seen from the Archwell tax filings and the $23 million in unsold inventory at her lifestyle brand. The Sussexes may no longer have the liquid capital to pay off a $20 million ultimatum. When your charity is recording a $3 million loss and your warehouse is full of unsold goods, your ability to settle evaporates. This leads us to the third path, the nuclear convergence, the most realistic and devastating scenario. In this timeline, all three books hit the global market in early 2026. This is the endgame that Montecito has feared since they first stepped foot on American soil. This scenario is driven by a trinity of evidence that cannot be ignored. First, Tom Bauer provides the paper trail, the IRS documents and financial records that challenge the humanitarian narrative. Second, Thomas Jr. provides the visual proof, the photographs and personal accounts from the pre-2011 era that contradict the official biography. Third, Sarah Ferguson provides the palace testimony, the recorded conversations and insider insights that reveal what was actually said behind closed doors at Lodge Royal. The result of this nuclear convergence is not just a bad news cycle, it is brand erasure. The American market, which once embraced the Sussexes as symbols of modern royalty and self-made success, is notoriously unforgiving when a narrative is exposed as manufactured. In this scenario, the Sussex brand is effectively marginalized. Major sponsors withdraw, charitable partnerships are quietly dissolved, and the couple finds themselves in a state of permanent brand paralysis. As we look toward the final days of March, the question isn't just about whether these books will be published, it's about which one will strike the first blow. The scenario tree suggests that the nuclear option is already in motion. And as the sun sets over Montecito today, the silence from the Duchess's camp is louder than it has ever been. But there is one final question that even the smartest lawyers can't answer. What happens when the person you confided in the most becomes the person with the most to gain from telling the truth? Beyond the tax filings and the bitter letters from her brother, there is a shadow looming over Montecito that no amount of PR spin can dissipate. While the world focuses on the three books, a far more dangerous weapon is reportedly being held in a secure vault, waiting for the right moment to be deployed. This isn't a manuscript. It isn't a collection of old photographs. It is the ultimate digital ghost, a 40-minute audio recording that Sarah Ferguson is rumored to have kept as her final insurance policy. The location of this recording was the Royal Lodge in Windsor. The time was just weeks before the royal wedding in May 2018. The participants? Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew. For years, the public has wondered why the Sussexes, who have attacked every other senior royal with surgical precision, have remained curiously silent about the Duke of York. In his memoir, Prince Harry dedicated only a single, carefully worded paragraph to his uncle. The question has always been, why the mutual protection? This secret recording reportedly captures the real Meghan Markle before the world stage was fully built. Insiders who claim to have knowledge of the tape say it wasn't a conversation about royal protocol or wedding flowers. It was a negotiation, a tactical exchange between two individuals who understood each other's vulnerabilities better than anyone else in the institution. The dialogue is said to reveal a pre-existing connection, a shared understanding of certain circles in Monaco and London that Meghan has spent years trying to erase from her official biography. The implications of this tape being leaked are not merely scandalous, they are constitutional. If this conversation confirms that Meghan possessed specific knowledge about Prince Andrew's private dealings or his controversial associates before joining the royal family, it doesn't just end the career of a duchess, it threatens to incinerate the reputation of the entire monarchy. Legal experts suggest that if the contents are what they are rumored to be, the line of succession itself could face an unprecedented challenge. Tonight, the lights are on in the Montecito legal offices. Lawyers are reportedly working 48-hour shifts, filing urgent cease and desist notices, and exploring every possible injunction to prevent this audio from ever reaching a publisher's hands. But they aren't just fighting a book deal anymore. There are whispers that a legal team in New York representing victims from the broader Epstein investigation is preparing to issue a civil subpoena for any and all recordings held by the Duchess of York. This is the ultimate open loop. In the world of high-stakes litigation, you can delay a book, but you cannot ignore a federal subpoena. The mechanism is now in motion. Step 1. The existence of the tape is leaked to create leverage. Step 2. The legal pressure triggers a panicked response from the target. Step 3. The tape is either sold for a record-breaking sum or seized by judicial authorities. As we approach the end of March 2026, the atmosphere is electric with anticipation. The 3 books were the opening salvo, but this recording is the nuclear warhead. Is the legal team in Montecito currently trying to stop a bestseller? Or are they trying to stop a knock on the door from authorities that could change everything? This investigation is moving faster than the news cycle can track. To make sure you receive our emergency update the moment this recording is confirmed, you must subscribe to the channel right now and hit the notification bell. We are monitoring the legal filings in real time. Drop a comment below with the word truth if you believe it's time for the masks to finally come off. Don't forget to like this video to help us push through the algorithm and get this story to the world. The clock hasn't just struck midnight, the alarms are finally ringing. Stay tuned. 04:15 a.m. Central London is paralysed in the deep silence of the pre-dawn hours, but inside the stone walls of Buckingham Palace, the vacuum of sleep has been violently shattered. We are reporting to you on this Saturday, March 21st, 26, with news that is currently sending shockwaves through the highest corridors of power. While the world was looking the other way, the lights in room 17, the nerve centre of the private secretary's office, were abruptly thrown on. Sources close to the household confirm that for the first time in nearly 3 years, a physical red dossier marked with the code name Protocol M has been pulled from the high-security archives and placed on the desk of the King's most senior advisors. The status? Level 1 emergency. But what could trigger such a drastic institutional reflex in the middle of the night? The answer arrived via a coordinated digital strike from across the Atlantic at exactly 0400 hours London time, the precise moment when the British media cycle is at its weakest and the American morning news cycle is waking up. Meghan Markle bypassed every established royal channel to release a global announcement. This was not a courtesy call. There was no memo sent to the office of the Lord Chamberlain. There was no strategic coordination with the palace press pool. By the time the sun began to rise over the River Thames, the narrative was already out of the palace's control. If you are joining us for this breaking investigative report, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We are tracking this developing story minute by minute, and your support helps us keep the pressure on the facts. Comment below with the word alert if you believe the palace should respond immediately or remain silent. The gravity of this breach became clear just 15 minutes later. At 04:30 a.m., an encrypted line was established between Adelaide Cottage and the palace. Prince William was reportedly briefed by Sir Edward Young. According to highly placed sources, the conversation was brief, clinical, and heavy, with the realization that a line had been crossed that cannot be uncrossed. William reportedly demanded to know if the Lord Chamberlain's office had any prior warning of the digital launch. Sir Edward's response was chilling. He reportedly told the prince, quote, "Sir, there was no warning. We are not looking at a routine media update. This is a total bypass of the Sandringham Agreement. It appears the Duchess has activated a parallel communications network," end quote. To the average observer, a digital announcement might seem harmless, but inside the machinery of the monarchy, this is a declaration of institutional war. Protocol M is not just a folder, it is a defensive mechanism designed to protect the sovereign from unauthorized external influence. By launching a global project without the palace's stamp of approval, Meghan has not just started a business, she has challenged the king's authority to govern the royal brand. The timing was surgically precise. By choosing the dead hour of London's media cycle, the Montecito team ensured that for at least 4 hours, their version of the truth would be the only version available to the global public. It left the king's advisors scrambling in the dark, unable to issue a rebuttal while the markets were opening and the headlines were being written in New York and Los Angeles. One veteran royal strategist described the move as a masterclass in asymmetric media warfare. They noted that the palace operates on tradition and consensus, while Meghan is now operating on the speed of Silicon Valley. As the clock ticked towards 0500 a.m., the internal assessment shifted from confusion to a cold, calculated response. The activation of Protocol M suggests that the palace is no longer treating this as a family disagreement. They are treating it as a breach of national institutional security. The question remains, what was in that announcement that was so volatile it required the heir to the throne to be woken on an encrypted line? Why did Sir Edward Young describe it as a parallel network? This is not about a podcast or a lifestyle brand anymore. This is about the fundamental structure of the House of Windsor. This is not a routine business venture. This is a silent ultimatum delivered to the heart of the British monarchy. And as we move into the specifics of what that red dossier contains, one thing is certain. The relationship between the palace and the Sussexes has just entered its most dangerous chapter yet. Stick with us as we break down the specific legal clauses triggered by this move in the next segment. You won't want to miss the details of the financial records linked to this launch. Hit that notification bell now. The situation is evolving faster than the headlines can keep up. To understand the gravity of this sunrise alert at Buckingham Palace, we must look past the glamour of the announcement and dissect the mechanical precision of how it was executed. Royal insiders are calling this a masterclass in narrative hijacking, a sophisticated 4-step operation designed to leave the British monarchy's communications department shouting into a void. This isn't just a publicity stunt. It is a calculated bypass of every institutional failsafe that has protected the crown for centuries. Step 1 is the exploitation of what intelligence analysts call the blind window. By launching this initiative while King Charles III is in a period of secluded recovery at Sandringham, the Montecito team identified a strategic vulnerability in the royal command structure. At Sandringham, the king is intentionally distanced from the rapid response machinery of the London Press Office. This choice of timing creates a paralyzing delay in the palace's ability to issue a sovereign rebuttal. While the king's advisors were physically travelling or coordinating via secure lines across rural Norfolk, the global narrative was already being cemented. One senior courtier reportedly remarked in a leaked internal memo, quote, "We weren't just outplayed on the message, we were outpaced by the geography of our own tradition," end quote. Step 2 moves the battlefield from the physical to the digital jurisdiction. By hosting the launch on high-speed servers physically located in Delaware, in the United States, the project effectively neutralized the Independent Press Standards Organization, or IPSO. In the United Kingdom, the palace can exert significant regulatory pressure on media outlets to verify claims before they go to print. However, by anchoring the digital footprint in the United States, Meghan's team utilized the shield of the First Amendment to create a regulatory blind spot. This meant that by the time the palace legal team could even draft a letter of inquiry, the information had already been mirrored across 10,000 independent platforms beyond the reach of British law. Step 3 is perhaps the most ruthless, the philanthropic leverage. Every controversial element of this new announcement was carefully wrapped in the language of global community service and humanitarian outreach. This creates a moral blockade for the palace. If the king's lawyers move to shut down the project on the grounds of trademark infringement or a breach of the Sandringham Agreement, they risk looking like they are sabotaging a charitable cause. It is a tactical trap. The palace is forced into a lose-lose scenario. Either they allow the unauthorized use of the royal brand to continue, or they attack it and suffer a catastrophic blow to their public approval ratings. The mechanism is simple. Use good deeds as a bulletproof vest for commercial expansion. The final step in this hijacking is the echo chamber activation. Hours before the official 0400-hour launch, a pre-selected network of global influencers and high-tier media personalities were reportedly granted early access under strict non-disclosure agreements. This ensured that the moment the embargo lifted, a massive, coordinated wave of support flooded social media. While the traditional British press was still trying to get a comment from a sleeping Buckingham Palace, the global conversation was already being dominated by a pro-Montecito script. The palace wasn't just facing a news story, they were facing a pre-programmed digital landslide. But as the sun rises over the Thames and the legal experts in Room 17 begin to analyze the fine print of these Delaware-based filings, they are discovering something far more concerning than a simple PR battle. Buried within the technical metadata of this launch is a digital signature that points to a third-party financier, someone whose interests may go far beyond a lifestyle brand. The question now isn't just how this happened, but who is truly providing the capital for this shadow monarchy to operate. As we dig deeper into the Protocol M files, the names appearing in the shadows are about to change the stakes of this conflict entirely. To truly grasp why the activation of Protocol M has sent the British monarchy into a defensive crouch, we have to look at the 6-year paper trail of escalating fractures. This is not an isolated incident. This is the final domino in a series of calculated maneuvers that have methodically dismantled the traditional boundaries between the Crown and the commercial world. When the King's advisors look at the Red Dossier today, Saturday, March 21st, 2026, they aren't just looking at one announcement, they are looking at a history of systemic breaches. The timeline of this institutional erosion began on January 8, 2020, at Sandringham. It was the moment the phrase Megxit entered the global lexicon. But behind the scenes, it was a unilateral declaration of independence that caught the late Queen Elizabeth II entirely off guard. The consequence was immediate. A hastily drafted Sandringham Agreement intended to build a firewall between royal titles and private profit. That firewall, we can now confirm, has been smouldering for 6 years. The heat intensified on March 7, 2021, inside a CBS studio in California. The Oprah interview was more than a media event. It was a controlled demolition of the palace's most guarded asset, public trust. By the time the credits rolled, the monarchy was facing its most severe crisis of legitimacy since 1997. The palace responded with the now famous phrase, "Recollections may vary, but the structural damage to the institutional narrative was permanent." Then came the moment the personal became political. On January 10, 2023, the release of the memoir Spare by Penguin Random House did something far more damaging than reveal family secrets. It officially severed the encrypted communication channel between Prince William and Prince Harry. Sources indicate that this was the day the red line was drawn. From that moment forward, every move made by the Sussexes was no longer viewed through the lens of family, but through the lens of institutional risk management. The road to this morning's emergency alert hit a critical acceleration point just weeks ago, on February 14, 2026. While the world was focused on Valentine's Day, a legal filing was quietly submitted in Montecito. Meghan Markle reportedly registered a suite of new global trademarks that utilized her royal titles in direct connection to a massive, multinational commercial network. This was a Section 4 violation, a direct breach of the Sandringham Agreement which explicitly forbade the monetization of the monarchy's brand. The palace remained silent, but the clock had started ticking. That leads us to yesterday, March 20th, 2026. The global project was announced bypassing the Lord Chamberlain and the King's private office entirely. It wasn't just a launch, it was a bypass of the sovereign's authority. Which brings us to right now. As this broadcast goes live on the morning of March 21st, 2026, the atmosphere at St James's Palace is one of clinical urgency. We can confirm that the Privy Council has been summoned for a closed-door session. This is not a social gathering. The Privy Council is the body that advises the sovereign on the exercise of the royal prerogative. Their presence indicates that the palace is now exploring constitutional remedies to protect the Crown's image. The strategy has shifted. The era of never complain, never explain is being replaced by a cold, legalistic resolve. But as the council members review the metadata of Meghan's latest digital strike, they are finding a digital fingerprint that suggests this 6-year timeline wasn't just driven by one couple. There are signatures in the financial filings that point to a much larger, much more shadow-bound architecture. The question the council is asking now is terrifying. Is this an independent move, or is it a coordinated effort to force the monarchy into a position of total irrelevance? The answer lies in the specific financial clauses hidden within that Delaware filing, and the details are about to go public. The investigation into the events of March 21st, 2026 has now moved beyond mere public relations and into the cold, hard world of forensic accounting. We have gained access to a high-level internal document that changes the entire nature of this confrontation. It is the Sovereign Grant Audit, filing number 2026-XJ9. This is not a public brochure. It is a restricted financial ledger used by the palace to track the integrity of the royal brand. The audit has exposed a startling trail of capital. According to sources within the Crown Estate Office, the institution responsible for managing the monarchy's vast portfolio, investigators have flagged a series of irregular financial injections. These are not small sums from private donors. We are talking about massive capital flows originating from top-tier venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. The destination? The newly announced global project led by Meghan Markle. The Crown Estate Office reportedly raised the alarm when they discovered that these funds were specifically earmarked for a network that utilizes the Duchess of Sussex title as its primary marketing engine. A senior analyst at the office is said to have briefed the King's advisors with a chilling assessment. Quote, "We are no longer looking at a private media venture. We are looking at a transnational commercial entity that is effectively asset stripping the symbolic value of the British Crown for private equity gain. This is a direct violation of the fiduciary duty owed to the sovereign." End quote. This brings us to the most dangerous rung of the authority ladder, the legal mechanism of the Royal Proclamation of 1917. Historically, this proclamation was designed to safeguard the purity of the royal house. In the modern context, palace lawyers are now arguing that using a title granted by the sovereign to facilitate transnational profit constitutes a fundamental breach of the loyalty to the Crown clause. It is a legal argument that hasn't been used with this level of severity in over a century. The consequences are no longer theoretical. We can confirm that a formal ultimatum has been dispatched via an encrypted diplomatic courier from London to Montecito. The palace has issued a 72-hour deadline. The demand is absolute. Meghan Markle must voluntarily remove all royal titles and styles from every commercial branch of the new global project. If the clock runs out at 0900 hours on Tuesday morning without a compliance filing, the palace is prepared to trigger the nuclear option. This is the Deprivation of Titles Act. Unlike previous administrative changes, this would involve a formal motion in the British Parliament to permanently strip the Sussexes of their remaining peerages. It is a process that would be public, brutal, and irreversible. One source close to the Prince of Wales suggests that William is no longer interested in mediation. He is reportedly focused on the structural survival of the monarchy. During a late-night session with the legal team, the prince was heard stating that the Crown cannot be a silent partner in a California-based corporation. As the 72-hour countdown begins, the global media is focused on the glamour of the launch, but the real story is unfolding in the basement offices of the Crown Estate. They are following the money, and what they are finding is a digital trail that leads to a third-party financier with a history of destabilizing traditional institutions. The question is no longer just about a title. It is about who is truly bankrolling this challenge to the Windsor line. The deadline is looming, and the response from Montecito, or the lack of one, will determine if the British monarchy remains a sovereign institution or becomes a subsidiary of a global tech empire. As the clock ticks toward the 72-hour deadline set by the palace, the atmosphere inside Adelaide Cottage has shifted from reactive crisis management to cold, long-term strategic planning. Prince William, the future king, is reportedly no longer looking at this as a family dispute. He is looking at a scenario tree, a tactical roadmap designed to protect the institutional integrity of the House of Windsor at all costs. According to insiders close to the Prince of Wales's strategy team, 3 distinct paths have been laid out on his desk this Saturday morning, March 21, 2026. The first path, categorized in internal memos as the high volatility scenario, is the one the palace fears most. In this version of events, Meghan Markle responds to the 72-hour ultimatum, not by retreating, but by escalating. This would involve the immediate announcement of a second, more explosive memoir, effectively Spare Part 2. The fallout would drag the British royal family into a protracted, multi-year legal battle inside the United States judicial system over privacy and intellectual property. The projected consequence is devastating. A permanent drain on the monarchy's resources and a potential collapse of public support to below 40%. For William, this is the war of attrition that could hollow out the crown before he even wears it. The second path is the compromise protocol. This scenario envisions a secret, high-level treaty where Prince Harry is allowed a limited, ceremonial return to the United Kingdom for state events, while Meghan remains officially and permanently barred from all royal functions. While this sounds like a middle ground, William's advisors have reportedly flagged it as low probability. The reason? The internal personality profiles of the Montecito operation suggest that Meghan Markle will never accept a secondary or invisible role. Any deal that excludes her is seen as a non-starter, making this middle path a strategic dead end. This leads us to the third scenario, the one that sources indicate is now the most realistic and favoured by the Prince of Wales: absolute isolation. This is the hardline approach. It involves a total, surgical decoupling of the House of Windsor from the Sussex brand. We are talking about the removal of all remaining patronages, the striking of their names from the official royal website, and the potential deployment of the Deprivation of Titles Act through Parliament. The rationale behind William's preference for this hardline stance is purely institutional. He is currently overseeing the final stages of his own coronation readiness plan. For William, the survival of the monarchy depends on one thing: a single, unified source of sovereign legitimacy. He cannot, under any circumstances, allow a parallel monarchy to operate out of California, a rival court that uses royal titles to bypass traditional protocols and secure venture capital from Silicon Valley. To William, allowing the Sussexes to remain half in, half out is not an act of kindness. It is a strategic leak in the hull of the British state. As he looks toward his future reign, William is reportedly convinced that the only way to save the institution is to make the separation permanent and absolute. He is choosing the stability of the institution over the sentiment of the family. However, as the legal teams finalize the isolation papers, a new and unsettling variable has emerged from the audit of the Protocol M files. It appears that the Silicon Valley investors bankrolling Meghan's project are not just looking for a return on their investment. They are looking for something far more significant, something that involves the digital sovereignty of the United Kingdom itself. The hardline approach may protect the titles, But will it be enough to stop the invisible hand now reaching for the Crown's digital assets? The answer may lie in a final, unverified communication intercepted just 3 hours ago. As the sun climbs higher over the spires of London on this Saturday morning, March 21st, 2026, the immediate panic within Buckingham Palace has settled into something far more dangerous, a cold, calculated state of high alert. We have spent the last hour dissecting the Protocol M crisis, from the digital ambush in Montecito to Prince William's hardline strategy for institutional survival. But there is one final detail in that red dossier, a detail so sensitive it was not included in the typed briefings. It is a single, handwritten note scrawled on the very last page of the file, reportedly written in the hurried script of a high-ranking intelligence liaison within the palace. It does not mention Meghan Markle. It does not mention Prince Harry. Instead, it refers to an anonymous principal behind the massive Silicon Valley capital injections we discussed earlier. And here is the detail that has turned the 72-hour ultimatum into a race against time. According to intercepted travel manifests, this individual was physically present in the City of London yesterday, March 20th, 2026. While the world was reacting to Meghan's global project launch, the true architect of the financing was reportedly moving through the shadows of London's financial district. This discovery has changed the entire calculus for the King's advisors. It suggests that Meghan Markle may not be the final boss in this conflict, but rather the visible face of a much larger, much more sophisticated attempt to disrupt the British constitutional order. The questions now being asked behind the closed doors of St James's Palace are chilling. Who is this anonymous figure? Why would a Silicon Valley power player be in London on the exact day a parallel royal narrative was launched from California? We are not just talking about a tech billionaire looking for a branding opportunity. We are looking at a potential shadow state maneuver, a strategic alignment between high-tech capital and a global media icon to render the traditional monarchy obsolete. Is this a move by a global tech disruptor to privatize the influence of the British Crown? Or is it a political operative using the Sussexes as a Trojan horse to weaken the United Kingdom's soft power on the world stage? The presence of this financier in London, at the precise moment the 72-hour clock began to tick, suggests a level of coordination that the palace has never faced in its 1,000-year history. One source within the City of London's high-security banking sector has indicated that a massive transfer of digital assets was authorized shortly after the Montecito announcement. The digital signature on that transfer matches the metadata found in the Protocol M files. We are currently following the trail of these funds through a series of offshore holding companies, and the names we are uncovering are staggering. This is the final variable. This is the wild card that could make Prince William's isolation strategy irrelevant. If the money behind the Sussexes is more powerful than the institution they left behind, the House of Windsor is facing an existential threat that no Act of Parliament can easily fix. We are not finished with this investigation. Our team is currently verifying the identity of the individual cited in London yesterday through 2 independent sources within the Metropolitan Police's Protection Command. The truth about who is really bankrolling the fall of the Windsor narrative is about to come to light. We will be releasing the full identity of this anonymous principal and the details of their London meetings in our next investigative update at 2000 hours tomorrow. You cannot afford to miss this. This is the final piece of the puzzle that changes everything you thought you knew about the royal rift. If you found this investigation vital, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel now. Turn on your notification bell so you are alerted the second we go live with the identity of the Silicon Valley architect. Comment below with the word truth if you want the full financial records released. The 72-hour countdown is active. The shadows are moving. We will see you soon. Stay sharp. The clock at Windsor Castle strikes 8:45 a.m. While the world sleeps, a dusty green Land Rover Defender pulls up to the side entrance of St. George's Chapel. There is no motorcade, no red carpet, no flashing lights. The woman behind the wheel is Zara Tindall. For years, this was her ritual, a private Sunday service with her grandmother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. But today, Friday, March 20th, 2026, that quiet routine has been shattered by a single sentence from the King. Buckingham Palace is trembling. We have just received confirmation that King Charles III has delivered a historic mandate regarding royal titles, and the reaction from inside the gates is not what anyone expected. Witnesses claim Zara Tindall, the woman who spent 44 years successfully avoiding the princess label, was seen in tears shortly after the announcement. But these were not tears of joy for a new title. They were tears for the death of her freedom. Before we dive into the classified documents, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are tracking this breaking story in real time, and you do not want to miss the next update. Drop a comment below. Do you think Zara should accept a formal role or stay a private citizen? To understand why this is happening now, we have to look at the St. George's reality. For decades, Zara held a unique position. According to an internal memo from the Lord Chamberlain's office dated July 2022, Zara was the only member of the family without a royal title who possessed priority alpha access to the monarch's private quarters. This wasn't about status, it was a psychological anchor. Palace insiders recall the Queen once whispering to her granddaughter during a walk at Balmoral, quote, "You are the lucky one, Zara. You have the name, but you don't have the cage." But the cage has just been reopened. Let's look at the timeline of how we got to this breaking point. On May 15, 1981, Princess Anne made the radical choice to refuse titles for her children. On July 30, 2011, Zara married Mike Tindall in a ceremony that proved a royal marriage could be stable and grounded without the interference of the state. By August 2022, a secret meeting took place at Gatcombe Park between Prince William and Zara. The immediate consequence? A quiet agreement that Zara would serve as the strategic reserve for the monarchy. Now, the mechanism of this strategic reserve has been triggered. It works in 3 distinct steps. Step 1. Isolation. Zara was kept away from royal duties to maintain a clean public image. Step 2. Hardening. She was allowed to build a career and a family in the real world, far from the controversies that swallowed Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Step 3. Activation. This occurs when the core working royals, including Catherine and William, require a solid, scandal-free foundation to support the crown during a transition. The King's announcement today at 9:44 a.m. is that activation. Why is this a shock? Because Zara's marriage is widely considered the most stable in the United Kingdom. William and Catherine know they need a grounded family base to rule from. They need the cousins Zara, Peter, Louise, and James. These 4 were raised without the trappings of royalty, making them far more resilient than those who grew up at the center of constant headlines. But for Zara, this is a heavy price. One source inside the palace describes a tense conversation between King Charles and Zara just hours ago. The king reportedly told her, quote, "The crown no longer has the luxury of your silence. We need your presence, not just your support." Zara's response was a silent, emotional breakdown. She realized that the blessing of being a commoner was being revoked to save the institution. We are looking at 3 possible scenarios. Scenario A. Zara accepts the title and becomes a full-time working royal, sacrificing her equestrian career. Scenario B. She negotiates a hybrid role, maintaining her independence while taking on high-level diplomatic duties. Or the most realistic scenario, the grounded shield plan. Zara becomes the unofficial face of the new monarchy, a princess in everything but name, serving as William's most trusted advisor. But as the news spreads across London this morning, one question remains. In his announcement, King Charles mentioned a binding clause for the next generation. This means Zara's children might be the ones truly paying the price for this decision. Is Mike Tyndall ready to let his children enter the very cage Zara fought so hard to stay out of? The answer lies in a private document scheduled for release at midnight. Stay tuned, because the story of the princess who never was is about to take its most dangerous turn yet. Make sure you've liked this video and shared it. The world needs to know the truth behind those tears. The tears we saw this morning at 9:44 a.m. didn't fall in a vacuum. They are the final notes in a 45-year symphony of tactical avoidance. To understand why Zara Tyndall is devastated today, we have to look at the timeline of a woman who spent her entire life running away from a throne that has finally caught up to her. The first brick in this wall was laid on May 15, 1981, at St. Mary's Hospital. While the world expected a new princess, Princess Anne did something unprecedented. She signed a formal waiver, refusing the Her Royal Highness title for her daughter. This wasn't just a mother's whim, it was a legal extraction. By staying untitled, Zara was placed outside the jurisdiction of the Succession to the Crown Act's most restrictive protocols. She was a royal by blood, but a civilian by law, a ghost in the machine. For 3 decades, this ghost status worked perfectly. It culminated on July 30th, 2011, at Canongate Kirk in Edinburgh. When Zara married Mike Tyndall, a professional rugby player, she didn't need a formal instrument of consent signed by the Queen and approved by Parliament. She didn't need to fit into a political box. This lack of red tape created what royal observers call the Steel Alliance, the most stable, grounded marriage in the modern Windsor era. While other royal marriages were fracturing under the weight of state expectations, Zara and Mike were building a fortress of normalcy. But the fortress began to show cracks on August 1, 2022. In a secure corner of Gatcombe Park, Prince William reportedly held a 4-hour private meeting with his cousin. The immediate consequence of that afternoon, a classified verbal agreement. Zara was officially designated as the Strategic Reserve. In the event of a catastrophic thinning of the royal line, she would be the one to step into the breach. That catastrophic event arrived sooner than anyone feared. On January 15, 2024, the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace shifted from routine to red alert. Internal health dossiers for both King Charles and the Princess of Wales were leaked to a select group of senior advisors. This was the trigger for Operation Bridge, a high-stakes contingency plan designed to transition untitled family members into active supporting roles. An aide close to the king reportedly whispered to a colleague during a late-night briefing, quote, "The front line is too thin. We are calling in the reserves." Zara is the only one the public still trusts completely. This brings us to today, March 20th, 2026. At exactly 9:44 a.m., the king delivered the mandate that changed the definition of a working royal forever. This is the breaking point. The era of the private citizen is over for Zara Tyndall. When the announcement was read, Zara realized her life of equestrian trials, school runs, and private business ventures was being traded for the very cage her mother tried to save her from. She isn't just crying because of a title. She's crying because the Steel Alliance she built with Mike is now under the direct scrutiny of the Crown. The tactical exit she's been navigating since 1981 has led her directly back to the center of the storm. But why did the king choose this specific moment to force her hand? And what does the Lord Chamberlain's office know about the other cousins that made Zara the only viable option? The deeper we dig into the palace records, the more it looks like Zara wasn't just a choice, she was the only survivor. The movement inside the palace today is not just a reorganization, it is a systemic cleansing of the royal bloodline. Behind the tears and the public announcements lies a cold, calculated strategy that insiders are calling the authority stairs. For months, Prince William has been quietly executing a purge of the York faction, specifically Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, to make room for what he considers the Untitled Four. This elite tactical group consists of Zara Tyndall, Peter Phillips, Lady Louise, and James, Earl of Wessex. To see the proof, we have to follow the money. At the first level of this investigation are the official records. The Sovereign Grant Financial Report for 2025 contains a startling set of data. Budget allocations for security and administrative support for those holding the title of Duchess have been slashed by 30%. Simultaneously, travel and operational expenses for a vague category labelled Special Advisors, a role filled by untitled family members, have surged by 45%. This is not a coincidence. It is a financial chokehold. By defunding the traditional titles, William is effectively sidelining the sisters associated with the scandals of Prince Andrew. An aide within the Treasury Department reportedly noted in an internal email, quote, "The ROI on titles is currently negative. We are shifting capital to the grounded assets." At the second level of the stairs, we find the institution itself. The Privy Council is currently meeting behind closed doors to review an amendment to the 1917 letters patent. Historically, this decree by King George V defined who could be called a prince or princess. But the new proposed amendment seeks to redefine the working royal based on merit and public approval rather than birthright. One high-ranking official within the Privy Council office was overheard saying during a briefing on January 10, 2026, quote, "The 1917 rules were for a world that no longer exists. We need a flexible shield, not a heavy crown." This leads us to the third level, the ultimate legal mechanism. This is where Zara Tindall becomes the most dangerous player on the board. In the world of royal PR, a title is often a liability. When a titled royal is involved in a scandal, like the massive controversies that have plagued the York family, the Crown is forced to go through the messy, public process of stripping those titles. It is a PR nightmare that leaves a permanent scar on the monarchy. Zara Tindall, however, possesses what legal experts call the ultimate armor. Because she has no royal title, she cannot be stripped of anything. She is immune to the traditional punishments of the court. She can walk into a boardroom, a stadium, or a hospital, and her authority comes from her character and her achievements, not a piece of parchment from 1917. Prince William recognizes that Zara is bulletproof. You cannot attack a title that doesn't exist. You cannot scandalize a woman who has already proven she can survive as a private citizen. By elevating the Untitled Four, William is building a new palace wall, one made of real-world credibility rather than ancient honorifics. But as the York sisters find their influence evaporating in real time this morning, a new tension is rising. If Beatrice and Eugenie are the casualties of this blood filtering, what happens to the secrets they still hold? The King's announcement at 9:44 a.m. has activated a mechanism that cannot be stopped. The Untitled Four are moving in, but the titled casualties are not going quietly. The question is no longer who holds the vuongmien, but who holds the leverage. And as of this hour, the leverage is firmly in the hands of the woman who just realized she can no longer hide in the shadows. The King's announcement at 9:44 a.m. this morning was not a sudden decision. It was the final stage of a multi-decade operational strategy known internally as the Grounded Shield. For 40 years, the British public believed Zara Tindall was simply living her best life as a private citizen. In reality, she was being stress-tested for the very crisis the monarchy is facing today. Prince William is now activating this shield, and to understand why it's working, we have to decode the mechanism behind it. The first phase of the Grounded Shield is isolation. This began in 1981, when Princess Anne, with the full quiet consensus of Queen Elizabeth II, refused to grant Zara and Peter any royal titles. This was the primary condition for the plan to succeed. By isolating them from the HRH status, the palace effectively removed them from the reach of the sovereign grant's restrictive protocols and, more importantly, the suffocating glare of the international press. They were royals by blood, but ghosts in the administrative system. The second phase is hardening. This is where Zara became the ultimate asset. Unlike her cousins, who were shielded by palace walls and security details, Zara was forced to navigate the real world. She had to secure her own sponsorships. She had to train for the Olympics like any other athlete. She had to earn her silver medal on the world stage through sweat and discipline, not through a birthright. This created what PR experts call genetic immunity to scandal. When you have earned your own success, you are much harder to tear down. A senior strategist within the Royal Communications team reportedly noted in a 2023 operational brief, quote, "Zara is the only member of the inner circle who has been properly hardened by civilian reality. She is the only one who can survive a public trial without a title to hide behind." Phase 3 is activation. This is the moment we are living through right now, March 20th, 2026. The activation trigger was the simultaneous health crises involving King Charles and the Princess of Wales. When the front line of working royals collapsed, it left a vacuum of authority. Suddenly, the untitled four Zara, Peter, Louise, and James were no longer just family members. They became the only viable candidates to stabilize the institution. They are stepping into the breach not as entitled aristocrats, but as high-achieving, morally grounded professionals. The final phase is integration. This is the secret sauce of William's new monarchy. The public accepts Zara Tindall because she is relatable. People have seen her at the grocery store, at muddy equestrian trials, and in the stands of rugby matches. She represents a bridge between the 1,000-year-old traditions of the crown and the modern values of hard work and authenticity. In every public opinion poll conducted this morning, Zara's approval ratings have eclipsed those of the traditional, titled royals, by a staggering margin. The strategy is clear. William is replacing the party princess image with the working professional reality. By the time the sun sets on Windsor tonight, the definition of what it means to be a royal will have shifted forever. The grounded shield has been deployed, and it is holding firm. But as Zara steps into the spotlight, the pressure on her marriage is reaching a fever pitch. There is a classified report circulating within the Lord Chamberlain's office regarding a pre-activation audit of Mike Tindall's private business ventures. If the shield is going to hold, every link in the chain must be unbreakable. And right now, the palace is looking very closely at the links they don't yet control. The King's announcement at 9:44 a.m. has set the wheels of a constitutional crisis in motion. But inside the secure offices of the Lord Chamberlain, the future is already being mapped out. Strategic analysts within the palace have been working on a secret document titled The Windsor Contingency, which outlines 3 distinct paths for the monarchy under a future King William. Each scenario depends entirely on one woman, Zara Tindall. The first path, Scenario A, is the rejection protocol. In this reality, Zara exercises her legal right granted by her mother's 1981 waiver to refuse any formal role. She chooses the quiet life of Gatcombe Park and her equestrian career over the demands of the crown. This is the worst-case scenario for Prince William. With a 15% probability of occurring, it leaves William dangerously isolated. Without Zara's grounded presence to bridge the gap, the king-in-waiting is left to fight a war of public perception on 2 fronts: the lingering scandals of the York faction and the unpredictable media eruptions from across the Atlantic. In this scenario, the grounded shield collapses, leaving the inner circle vulnerable to a total vacuum of authority. Scenario B, with a 25% probability, is the hybrid compromise. Zara agrees to support the family on a part-time basis, appearing at major state events and stepping in for the Princess of Wales during periods of recovery. However, this path carries a high human cost. History shows that half-in, half-out royal roles rarely survive the scrutiny of the British tabloids. The intense media pressure on the Tindall household would reach levels not seen since the 1990s. Strategic advisors fear this would create friction within the Steele alliance, the marriage of Zara and Mike Tindall. Mike, A man used to the blunt honesty of the sporting world might find the restrictive protocols of the palace intolerable. In scenario B, the monarchy gains a helper but risks losing its most stable family unit to the relentless grind of the paparazzi. This leads us to scenario C, the most realistic and arguably the most revolutionary path. Palace insiders are calling this the extended family executive. In this scenario, the monarchy sheds its reliance on ancient titles and embraces a corporate-style efficiency. Zara and Peter Phillips become the uncrowned right-hand aides to the king. They don't wear tiaras, they run operations. Under this model, Zara and Peter would take over the massive portfolio of charities and patronages previously managed by more senior, titled royals. They would act as working executives rather than working royals. This allows them to maintain their grounded, relatable image while providing the massive administrative support William and Catherine desperately need. The reason this scenario is the favorite among constitutional experts is simple: survival. In the 21st century, the public no longer craves the splendor of a distant, titled aristocracy. They demand efficiency, transparency, and real-world impact. By utilizing Zara and Peter, two individuals who have lived as commoners, paid their own bills, and earned their own accolades, William creates a real-work royal face. One former private secretary to the late Queen reportedly said in a leaked briefing, quote, "If the crown is to survive the next 30 years, it must stop looking like a fairy tale and start looking like a high-functioning NGO. Zara is the CEO they've been waiting for. As the world processes the news of the king's mandate, the stakes could not be higher." Scenario C represents the only way the monarchy survives a modern world that is increasingly hostile to hereditary privilege. But as Zara's tears proved this morning, being the CEO of the crown isn't a job she ever applied for. The king has made his move. Now, the world is waiting for the one response that could save or shatter the House of Windsor. The shadows at Windsor are growing longer, and the extended family executive is no longer a theory. It is becoming a necessity. The tears shed by Zara Tindall at 9:44 a.m. this morning were not born of joy or restored honor. They were a profound mourning for the quiet, independent life she built at Gatcombe Park, a life that effectively ended the moment the king's mandate was read aloud. For 44 years, Zara was the master of her own destiny. She was the one member of the family who could walk through a grocery store unnoticed and compete on the world stage on her own merit. But our investigation into the secret annexes of the king's new decree has uncovered a hidden detail the public was never supposed to see. Inside the official document is a specific legal mechanism labeled the Succession Stability Clause. This is the true source of Zara's heartbreak. It is a binding agreement that does more than just demand her individual service to the crown. It creates a formal framework that could bind her children, Mia, Lena, and Lucas, to the very golden cage Zara spent her entire adulthood avoiding. This isn't just a temporary fix to help Prince William during a crisis. It is a permanent restructuring of the royal line. The king has essentially declared that the era of the private royal is over. This brings us to the most volatile element of this breaking story, Mike Tindall. As a man who has always prioritized his family's privacy and has built a successful career in the professional, sporting, and media world, Mike now faces an impossible choice. He has been the bedrock of Zara's Steel Alliance for 15 years. Now, he must decide whether to allow his children to be drafted into the royal machine to save an institution they were never supposed to belong to. Or does he stand against the king to protect the normalcy he promised his family? One palace insider, speaking on the condition of absolute anonymity, described the atmosphere inside the residence as electric and dangerously tense. A high-stakes, closed-door meeting is scheduled at Windsor Castle for exactly 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. This 24-hour window is the final countdown for the Tindall family. If Mike Tyndall refuses to sign the activation papers associated with the new mandate, the extended family executive plan could collapse before it even begins, leaving Prince William without his most vital support system. The stakes have never been higher for the House of Windsor. We are witnessing a historic battle between blood duty and parental protection. Will Zara find a way to shield her children's future, or has the king already secured their lives behind palace walls through this legal maneuver? The grounded shield was designed to protect the monarchy, but it may end up shattering the very family unity it was meant to preserve. We are monitoring every signal coming out of Windsor and Gatcombe Park as this situation unfolds. This is a developing story that is changing by the minute. If you want to stay ahead of the next major revelation in this royal power struggle and receive the latest updates on the secret Windsor meeting, you must hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video to show your support for our investigative coverage and join the conversation in the comments below. Do you believe Zara and Mike should fight for their children's freedom, or is their duty to the crown absolute? The answers are hidden behind closed doors for now, but the clock is ticking toward tomorrow's 10 a.m. deadline. We will be back with a full report the moment the outcome of that meeting is confirmed. Don't take your eyes off this channel. The truth is about to emerge. 9:15 p.m. London time, March 20th, 2026. While the world sleeps, a high-frequency encrypted signal originates from a private estate in Montecito, California. It does not go through the standard palace switchboard. It bypasses the usual press filters. It pierces the multi-layered security firewalls of Kensington Palace, landing directly on a secure device in the Eastern Library. Prince William, the heir to the British throne, picks up. This is not a social call. This is not a moment of brotherly reconciliation. This is what intelligence insiders call a preemptive strike. As you watch this, remember that we are currently in the most volatile 48-hour window in the history of the modern monarchy. If you want to stay ahead of the official narrative before the palace releases its first formal statement, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications. The information we are uncovering today is moving faster than the mainstream media can track. The conversation lasted exactly 11 minutes. It was surgical. It was cold. According to high-level sources within the diplomatic protection circles, the call was not initiated to offer comfort. Prince Harry reportedly bypassed 3 levels of royal protocol to deliver a message that has sent the House of Windsor into a state of absolute panic. Eyewitnesses near Clarence House reported seeing a convoy of the Royal Military Police departing the grounds at the exact moment the call ended. The timing was not a coincidence. It was a synchronized display of internal friction. Reliable reports suggest the dialogue began with a chilling statement from the Duke of Sussex. Harry is said to have told his brother, and I quote, "William, I am looking at the same medical prognosis you are. I know what the doctors in room 12 are saying, and we need to discuss the transition now." William's response was reportedly devoid of any emotion, a calculated wall of silence followed by a single sentence. "You are no longer cleared for this level of intelligence, Harry. This line is for constitutional emergencies only." To which Harry allegedly replied, "This is a constitutional emergency, and you know it. Why does this matter?" Because beneath the surface of family tension lies a rigid institutional mechanism. Under the Emergency Communications Decree, specifically Protocol 4, any communication from a non-working royal during a Level 2 medical crisis must be logged by the Cabinet Office. This means Harry's call is now a matter of state record. It is a digital footprint that proves the Duke of Sussex still has active informants deep within the palace walls. He knew about the king's updated health status before the Prime Minister was fully briefed. If you find this level of investigation necessary in an era of controlled PR, please hit the like button right now. It tells the algorithm that transparency matters more than carefully crafted palace scripts. Comment below with the word truth if you believe the public has a right to know what is happening behind those closed doors. We are currently in what experts call the grey zone. This is the 48-hour period of silence before official announcement number 1 is broadcast to the world. During this window, the monarchy is at its most vulnerable. The House of Windsor operates on the illusion of total control, but this 11-minute breach proves the seal has been broken. By reaching out directly to William, Harry has signaled that he is not a spectator in this crisis. He is a participant with his own set of demands. The legal implications are staggering. If Harry is indeed privy to the details of the King's prognosis through unofficial channels, it triggers a security review by the Home Office. It suggests a leak at the highest level of the royal medical household. For William, this is a nightmare scenario. As the future king, he is trained to manage stability. But how do you manage stability when your own brother is calling from 5,000 miles away, holding a deck of cards you didn't know he had? The clock is ticking toward a deadline the public cannot see. By the morning of March 22nd, the palace will be forced to speak. But the narrative is already being shaped by what happened at 21:15 last night. The question isn't just about what was said in those 11 minutes. The question is, what is Harry planning to do with the information he already possesses? This wasn't a phone call, it was a countdown. Stay with us as we peel back the next layer of this unfolding constitutional crisis. The file is only just beginning to open. To understand why an 11-minute phone call has paralyzed the most powerful institution in Britain, we must deconstruct the classified timeline of the last 72 hours. This is not a sequence of random events. It is a domino effect of institutional failures and desperate power plays. The clock began its terminal countdown on March 18, 2026. Inside room 12 of the London Clinic, a high-security medical wing usually reserved for global heads of state, the Supreme Medical Board gathered in total silence. By 1400 hours, they had signed a document titled Prognosis Update, Case Alpha. This was the trigger point. Within 60 minutes of that signature, a formal summons was issued to the Privy Council, the body of advisers that only meets under the most extreme constitutional circumstances. The message was clear to those inside the circle. The transition was no longer a theoretical exercise. It had become an immediate necessity. By the morning of March 19th, the tension shifted to Clarence House. Observers noted a blacked-out SUV entering through the rarely used back gate, a maneuver designed to avoid the long lenses of the paparazzi. It was Prince William. This arrival signaled the activation of the Bridge Protocol, a highly sensitive, multi-stage operation designed to manage the shift of sovereign authority. Sources within the household recount a brief but chilling exchange between William and a senior palace aide. When asked if the standard press release was ready, William reportedly replied, "The King's health is a private matter, but the Crown's survival is a public obligation." Prepare the contingency files. While London prepared for a transition, California was already moving. At 1400 hours on March 20th, Prince Harry was photographed leaving a prestigious legal firm in Montecito. This wasn't a firm specializing in entertainment or charity. These were experts in international law and royal succession. Immediately following this meeting, the PR team at Archerwell was placed on a 24/7 active combat footing. They weren't preparing a tribute, they were preparing a manifesto. This leads us to the pivotal moment at 21:15 that same night, the encrypted call. We now know that during this conversation, Harry proposed a unified global statement. He suggested that he and William stand together to announce the King's condition, effectively bypassing the palace's own communications office. William's rejection was absolute. He reportedly told Harry, "There is no we in this protocol. There is only the institution and those who serve it." By refusing this joint statement, William drew a line in the sand that cannot be erased. By 6 a.m. On March 21st, just hours ago, Buckingham Palace became a fortress of silence. The men in grey, the powerful private secretaries who truly run the monarchy, convened an emergency summit in the 1844 room. Simultaneously, a curious phenomenon occurred. The BBC, usually the first to receive palace briefings, fell into an unnatural state of broadcasting stasis. No updates, no commentary, just a vacuum of information. As of this moment, the entire British establishment is operating in what insiders call panic mode. The systems are running, but the people behind them are terrified. Every gesture, every silence, and every secret legal filing in California is being analyzed by the security services. The public is watching the gates of Buckingham Palace, but the real story is happening in the data streams between two brothers who no longer speak the same language. The 72-hour breakdown is complete. Now, we enter the era of the aftermath. What happens when the silence finally breaks? The answer may lie in a document currently locked in the Lord Chamberlain's safe, a document that neither brother wants the world to see. The 11-minute conversation was not just a breach of silence, it was a breach of high-security encryption. To understand why the palace is in a state of internal collapse, we have to look at the hardware used. This call did not travel through a standard mobile network or a consumer-grade app. It was routed through the SecureLink satellite system, a hardened communication terminal located in the East Library of Kensington Palace. This system is reserved for top-tier diplomatic emergencies and direct contact with the Prime Minister. By picking up this specific handset, Prince William acknowledged that the situation had transcended family drama. It had become a matter of national security. The first level of this authority ladder is the movement of physical documents. Within 90 minutes of the call ending, a courier from the National Archives was seen arriving at the palace gates. The request was specific: the Regency Act of 1937. This is not a ceremonial scroll, it is the legal manual for a monarchy in crisis. It dictates exactly what happens when a reigning sovereign is no longer able to perform their constitutional duties. The fact that this document has been removed from the archives and placed on the Prince of Wales's desk tells us everything the official press releases are trying to hide. The gears of power are shifting. The second level involves the Lord Chamberlain's office, the nerve centre that manages every major royal event, from coronations to funerals. As of 6 a.m. today, an internal memo was circulated to all senior staff. The directive was absolute. All staff leave is suspended for the next 14 days. This 14-day window is a highly specific time frame within royal contingency planning. When the Lord Chamberlain cancels vacations, it means the institution is bracing for a surge in constitutional activity. A senior staff member reportedly described the atmosphere inside the office as clinical but desperate, with one official overheard saying, "The timeline has accelerated. We are no longer waiting for the news, we are managing the fallout." But the real breaking point lies in the third level, the legal mechanism of Section 4 of the Regency Act. This is the fine print that could change the future of the British monarchy forever. Under Section 4, if the monarch is incapacitated, a group of high-ranking officials, including the Queen Consort and the heir to the throne, must certify that the king is unable to rule. Once that certification is signed, the role of councillors of state is activated. This is where the structure of the House of Windsor meets a catastrophic legal reality. Despite his departure from official duties and his relocation to California, Prince Harry remains, by law, a councillor of state. He is one of the very few individuals legally entitled to sign documents on behalf of the Crown in the event of the King's illness. William is reportedly facing a strategic nightmare. If he activates the Regency Act to take control, he must, by law, involve the brother he no longer trusts. The law, written in 1937, did not account for a prince living in Montecito with a global media platform. Sources suggest that during the encrypted call, Harry reminded William of this exact leverage, allegedly saying, "The law doesn't care about our history, William. It only cares about the signature. You can't move forward without me." If Harry refuses to sign, or if he demands conditions in exchange for his legal cooperation, the transition of power stalls. The monarchy enters a legal vacuum. This is the point of failure the palace has feared since 2020. The documents are out, the staff are on high alert, and the law is clear. But as the clock ticks toward the next official update, a new question emerges. How far is the palace willing to go to bypass its own laws to keep Harry away from the throne? The answer is hidden in a secondary file, one that hasn't been opened since the abdication of 1936. To understand why this 11-minute call from Montecito has paralysed the British establishment, we must look past the family friction and examine the cold, mathematical gears of the British Constitution. This was not a call for help, it was a tactical intervention. Prince Harry was not speaking as a younger brother. He was speaking as a critical component in the legal machinery of the Crown. This is what insiders call the signatory trap. To grasp the magnitude of the situation, we have to deconstruct the mechanism of sovereign transition, a three-step process currently unfolding behind the closed doors of Kensington Palace. Step 1. Medical certification. At this very moment, the Supreme Medical Board has moved beyond a simple diagnosis. They have transitioned to the formal assessment of temporary incapacity. Under the Regency Act, the moment a monarch is deemed unable to perform constitutional duties signing legislation, appointing officials, or receiving foreign diplomats, a legal trigger is pulled. The king remains the king, but the power must be delegated. Step 2. The activation of the Councillors of State. This is the point of failure. To delegate royal authority, the law requires the activation of the Councillors of State. There are exactly 5 individuals in this elite group. The protocol is rigid. For any executive action to be valid, at least 3 out of the 5 must sign the letters patent. Let's look at the current roster. Queen Camilla, Prince William, Prince Harry, Prince Andrew, and Princess Beatrice. This is where the math becomes a nightmare for the palace. Prince Andrew is legally sidelined due to previous scandals. Princess Beatrice, while loyal, is often viewed as a secondary figure in high-stakes constitutional maneuvers. That leaves the heavy lifting to Camilla, William, and Harry. Step 3. The activation condition. Here is the strategic leverage. If Harry refuses to sign, or if he places conditions on his signature, the entire regency process hits a legal stalemate. William cannot authorize himself. He needs 2 other signatures to move forward. If Andrew is unavailable and Beatrice is pressured, Harry becomes the ultimate kingmaker. Sources close to the negotiations suggest that during the encrypted call at 21:15, Harry didn't ask about symptoms. He asked about the terms of delegation. A narrated account of the exchange describes William's voice as strained and authoritative, reminding Harry that the country requires stability. Harry's reported response was a masterclass in calculated PR. Stability requires cooperation, William. And cooperation requires a seat at the table. You can't bypass the Regency Act just because I'm in California. The consequence of this stalemate is a full-blown constitutional crisis. If the heir to the throne cannot secure the necessary signatures to act as regent, the British government enters a state of legislative paralysis. No laws can be granted royal assent. No new prime minister could be sworn in. The machine stops. This explains the panic mode currently gripping Buckingham Palace. They are facing a reality where the brother who stepped away from the institution now holds the keys to its legal survival. Harry isn't just an exile, he is a signatory. He knows that without his pen hitting the paper, William is a king in waiting with no power to lead. The palace is now caught in a desperate race against a 48-hour deadline. Do they negotiate with the Duke of Sussex and grant him the security or the status he seeks? Or do they attempt a high-stakes legal maneuver to strip him of his councillor role, a move that would trigger a public court battle in the middle of a national emergency? The gears are grinding, but they are no longer moving forward. The mechanism is jammed. Every word released from Montecito is vetted by 3 layers of consultants before it ever reaches a microphone. Behind Prince Harry's public declaration, the seemingly selfless statement that he only wishes to support his father and brother during this difficult time, lies a sophisticated architecture of psychological warfare. This is what insiders call the noble entrapment strategy. By framing his intervention as an offer of help, Harry has placed Prince William in a strategic pincer movement. If William refuses the communication, Harry immediately secures the moral high ground as the shunned son, a narrative that resonates powerfully with a global audience. If William accepts the call, he inadvertently grants Harry a seat at the table during the most sensitive constitutional transition in a century. This is not about family comfort, it is about establishing a foot in the door, FID, protocol. Once Harry is involved in the private discussions regarding the king's health, he becomes a stakeholder in the regency process. He moves from being an exiled royal to being an active participant in the succession. The precision of this move is not accidental. According to high-level reports from the Mail on Sunday, a significant shift has occurred within the Sussex camp. Meghan Markle has reportedly engaged a new, high-intensity legal PR crisis firm based in Washington, D.C. This isn't a traditional Hollywood publicity agency. This firm specializes in lawfare, the strategic use of legal proceedings to shape public perception. Their mission is clear: to ensure that any attempt by the palace to bypass the Regency Act is met with an immediate, legally grounded counter-narrative. The war room in California is now operating 24/7, monitoring every official statement from London for even the slightest tactical opening. However, this aggressive maneuvers comes with an immense risk. We are now looking at a potential breach of the Sandringham Agreement, the 19-page document signed in early 2020 that dictated the terms of the Sussexes' departure. Clause 7 of that agreement is explicit. Non-working members of the royal family are strictly prohibited from interfering in or appearing to represent the official state business of the monarchy. By attempting to leverage his role as a counsellor of state during a medical emergency, Harry is walking a legal tightrope. The palace's legal team is currently reviewing the transcript of last night's 11-minute call to determine if Harry's offer of support crossed the line into unauthorized constitutional interference. If William and his advisors decide to play their most dangerous card, they could argue that Harry has fundamentally violated the spirit of his exit agreement. Such a move would allow the palace to trigger an emergency parliamentary review to remove Harry's name from the Regency list once and for all. But doing so in the middle of a health crisis would be a public relations catastrophe. William knows that Harry isn't just fighting for a Turkey or money, he is fighting for relevance. The support strategy is a masterclass in PR. It forces the palace to choose between legal purity and public sympathy. As the morning sun rises over London on March 21st, the tension within the Kensington Palace communications team has reached a breaking point. They are fighting a war on 2 fronts: the king's declining health and a brother who has mastered the art of the legal PR ambush. The question remains, how much is William willing to sacrifice to keep the gates closed? The silence from the palace is becoming deafening, but beneath that silence, a massive counterstrike is being prepared, one that aims to solve the Harry problem before the clock strikes midnight on the 21st. To understand the endgame, we have to look at the 3 potential paths ahead. One of them leads to a total collapse of the Windsor-Sussex relationship, and it's the path the palace is currently preparing for. As the clock strikes midday on March 21st, 2026, the British monarchy is running out of time to control a narrative that is rapidly slipping through its fingers. Behind the heavy oak doors of the palace briefing rooms, 3 distinct pathways are currently being debated by the king's most senior advisors. The choice they make in the next 12 hours will determine whether the House of Windsor survives this transition or enters a period of irreversible decline. The first scenario is what insiders call the scorched earth option. In this kitsch ban, Prince William would issue an unprecedented public denial of last night's 11-minute call, effectively labeling the reports from California as a fabrication. This would be a declaration of war. In retaliation, Harry's Washington-based legal PR team would likely release what they call the medical dossier, an unfiltered account of the King's health update that Harry claims to have received through unofficial channels. This would lead to a total fracture, a constitutional civil war played out in the global media, potentially destroying public confidence in the institution's ability to manage its own secrets. The second scenario is the diplomatic standoff. This would involve a masterclass in palace ambiguity, a vague, one-paragraph statement released by Buckingham Palace emphasizing family unity and shared concern for the King's recovery. However, the subtext would remain cold. Harry would stay in Montecito, his security requests would remain under review, and his access to the inner circle would remain at zero. This kitsch ban creates a functional exile, maintaining a thin veneer of stability while the underlying rot of the relationship continues to fester. For the public, it would be a signal that the status quo remains, but for the markets and the government, it would be seen as a sign of institutional stasis. The third, and by far the most realistic scenario, is the shadow settlement. According to those familiar with Prince William's pragmatic leadership style, he cannot afford a protracted legal or media battle while the King is undergoing treatment. In this secret agreement, William would offer Harry a significant concession, likely a guaranteed private security detail and a stabilized financial arrangement, in exchange for one thing: Harry's voluntary and permanent resignation from the list of councillors of state. This would be a clean break, masked as a personal choice. Harry would keep his dignity and his lifestyle, while William would remove the single greatest legal threat to his future regency. It is a high-stakes trade of money for power, a cold calculation designed to protect the crown's survival. If this deal is currently being finalized, we may see a sudden, quiet announcement regarding Harry's focus on his international charitable work within the coming days. But as we analyze these three paths, we must look at the final chilling detail of that 11-minute call, the detail that has left the palace intelligence services in a state of shock. There is a reason the call ended so abruptly at exactly 21:26. According to a highly placed source within the Kensington Palace security detail, William did not end the call with a goodbye. He ended it with a warning. He reportedly mentioned a specific, classified file that Harry was never supposed to know existed, a file titled Operation Golden Orb, Phase 2. As soon as those words were spoken, Harry reportedly went silent and disconnected the line. What is contained within Phase 2? Why did the mere mention of this operation cause the Duke of Sussex to abandon his tactical ambush? This document contains the true blueprint for the monarchy's future, and Harry's place within it may be far more precarious than he ever imagined. We are currently tracking the movement of the King's personal archives. If you want to be the first to know what Phase 2 actually entails before the official press blackout begins, you must subscribe and hit the notification bell now. The next 48 hours will redefine the throne. Comment below with Phase 2 if you want us to release our investigative findings on this classified file in our next report. The clock is ticking, and the real story is